Meghan Markle's, as ever, is on life support. Her brand is on life support. Newsweek polling.
It was only a matter of time before desperate Daniel was dumped. And that's what's happened. Trust me.
As ever, in my very personal opinion, is very much a ripoff. And we see this reflected in Meghan's latest pitiful seasonal offerings for Christmas.
A $9 rustic cake stand. That is all it took to ignite a global media firestorm on this Friday, June 12th, 2026. While the world's eyes are drawn to the sun-drenched coastal kitchen of Meghan Markle, a much darker, more calculated game of chess is being played behind the scenes. You might see a lifestyle brand launch, but if you look closer at the timing and the pristine lighting, you will see a masterclass in media manipulation. Welcome to the deep dive. Before we uncover the layers of this manufactured reality, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button, tap that like icon, and drop a comment below. Does a $9 cake stand really belong in a multi-million-dollar mansion, or are we being sold a carefully curated illusion? Your engagement helps us bring these investigations to light. On June 11th, 2026, exactly 24 hours ago, People magazine published an exclusive look into what they described as Meghan's coastal kitchen sanctuary. The article went into painstaking detail about a rustic wooden cake stand, retailing for just $9. The narrative was clear. Meghan is just like us. She is a mother, a homemaker, and a woman of simple, elegant tastes. But as the article circulated, seasoned media analysts began to smell a smokescreen. This is what experts call information saturation. By flooding the news cycle with trivial, wholesome content about home decor, the Sussex PR machine is effectively burying three massive crises that have been threatening to sink their brand for months. The first and perhaps most urgent distraction involves Prince Harry and the Silicon Valley giant BetterUp. As of June 2026, the legal pressure regarding Prince Harry's role and his private data within the organization has reached a boiling point. Sources reported that Harry allegedly told his legal team that his involvement was always intended to be visionary, not administrative. However, the courts are demanding transparency that the Duke is reportedly desperate to avoid. By talking about a $9 cake stand today, the media avoids talking about a multi-million-dollar legal deposition tomorrow. But there is something even more somber being hidden behind the coastal grandmother aesthetic. For the past several months, the African Parks charity, which Prince Harry has long championed and served as a director for, has been embroiled in devastating allegations of human rights abuses. We are talking about serious, systemic issues that require immediate accountability. Yet, instead of a formal statement or a transparent investigation, the public is given a recipe for strawberry jam and a glimpse of a moke-mack or rustic wooden pedestal. One investigative journalist recently remarked that it is as if they are trying to drown out the cries for justice with the sound of a whisk hitting a ceramic bowl. It is a strategic pivot to lifestyle content designed to make the couple appear uncancelable to major investors. Now, let us look at the setting of this perfect life. The People magazine spread claims this is the heart of their Montecito home. However, architectural experts and local real estate insiders are raising red flags. If you look at the footage from 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the promotional clip, the layout simply does not match the known floor plans of the Sussex estate. One industry insider whispered to the press that the entire kitchen was a short-term rental, staged to the last inch by a professional media contract team. They noted that the shelves were filled with books that looked unread and jars that looked empty. Meghan reportedly insisted to her production crew that the lighting must feel organic and timeless, but the reality is that this was a high-budget commercial set disguised as a family home. Why go to such lengths? Because the brand of the Duchess is currently her only surviving commercial asset. With major streaming deals in flux and public favor shifting, she must maintain the image of a successful entrepreneur and a devoted mother. The goal is to create a shell of at-home bliss to satisfy big-ticket investors who are beginning to question the return on their millions. As we move through June 2026, the question remains, how long can a $9 cake stand hold up the weight of such heavy secrets? The illusion of the coastal kitchen is beautiful, but the foundation is starting to crack. Stay tuned as we continue to track the digital breadcrumbs and the legal battles that this rustic aesthetic is trying so hard to hide. Don't forget to share this video if you think the truth matters more than the branding. If the staged kitchen photos and the $9 cake stand were the smoke, the latest data reports from early 2026 are the fire. While the media narrative tries to paint a picture of a successful transition into a lifestyle mogul, the cold, hard numbers tell a story of a brand in a state of absolute freefall. In the world of high-stakes celebrity branding, public perception is the only currency that matters. And right now, Meghan Markle is facing a total bankruptcy of influence in the United States. Data from the early months of 2026 has sent shockwaves through the Sussex PR headquarters. The YouGov favorability ratings, which are the industry standard for measuring a public figure's impact, have confirmed what many suspected. The American public's patience has finally run out. In the third quarter of 2025, Meghan's favorable rating stood at a modest 37%. However, as we look at the first quarter of 2026, that number has plummeted to a staggering 29%. The unfavorable numbers are even more damaging. They have climbed from 22% to 27% in the same period. To put this into perspective, her net approval rating has effectively evaporated, dropping 13 points from a healthy +15 to a precarious +2. This is not just a dip in popularity. This is a systemic rejection by the very market she has spent millions of dollars trying to court. But these numbers aren't just abstract figures on a chart, they are directly impacting the bottom line of her commercial venture, as ever. When the brand launched in December 2025, it was met with a surge of initial curiosity. The data shows that in its first month, the platform recorded 108,000 commercial visits from the United States. By January 2026, that number dropped to 89,000. The decline did not stop there. In February, traffic slowed to 83,500, and by April, it hit the red zone at 61,500. As of yesterday, June 11, 2026, the digital traffic from the United States has essentially frozen at 42,300 visits. This represents a catastrophic 60.8% decay in potential customers within the only market that handles her shipping and distribution. Analysts are looking at these metrics and seeing a ghost. While there is still international traffic, it is not the kind of traffic that generates revenue. Most of the remaining visitors are identified as casual observers or critics, people who are there to watch the train wreck rather than buy a product. One high-level digital marketing strategist recently remarked behind closed doors that these figures represent a death spiral. They noted that when you lose 60% of your core market in 6 months, you aren't just losing money, you are losing the trust of every major investor and retail partner. The As Ever brand was meant to be the foundation of their financial independence, but without the support of the American consumer, it is becoming a hollow shell. The most shocking realization for the Sussex team is that the curiosity has been replaced by indifference. The American public isn't just angry, they are moving on. When the data reveals that nearly 2/3 of your potential buyers have vanished, no amount of rustic kitchen staging can fill that void. The question that remains is far more chilling than any poll. When the core audience disappears and the commercial value hits zero, what happens to the woman who gambled everything on the illusion of being relatable? The numbers have spoken, and the reality they describe is far grimmer than any carefully lit photograph would suggest. Beyond the aesthetic charm of a wooden cake stand and the soft focus lighting of a staged kitchen lies a cold, bureaucratic reality that no PR team can spin. Since the beginning of 2026, a startling pattern has emerged in the media landscape. One specific publication, People magazine, has released over 100 one-sided articles praising every minute detail of Meghan's new lifestyle. This sheer volume of coverage has led many industry insiders to ask a burning question. Has the publication sold a gold package VIP advertising deal to run a coordinated image rehabilitation campaign? When a media outlet functions more like a PR firm than a news source, it triggers a deep sense of frustration among the public. People are beginning to see through the information saturation and are looking for the truth behind the glossy covers. And that truth is currently hidden within the sterile, uncompromising files of the United States federal government. We are now looking at the first tier of what we call the authority ladder, the hard evidence. There is a formal legal document, Federal Record Number 9723415 Alpha, which tells a story far different from the one in the magazines. This is an office action notice, a direct communication that strips away the celebrity glamour and exposes the operational failures of the As Ever brand. This brings us to the second tier of authority, the enforcement agency. The United States Patent and Trademark Office, or the USPTO, is the ultimate gatekeeper of American commerce. They do not care about vines and coastal aesthetics, and they certainly do not care about royal titles. Their job is to ensure that a brand is legitimate, unique, and actually conducting business. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the Sussex legal team, the USPTO has issued a preliminary refusal for the As Ever trademark. The reasons are as embarrassing as they are professionally damaging. First, the agency cited a likelihood of confusion with existing trademark structures, suggesting that the brand's very name lacked the distinctiveness required by law. But the second reason is even more damning, a total lack of evidence showing actual trade within the United States. To the legal mind, this suggests that As Ever might be little more than a ghost brand, a hollow shell with a logo, but no real products moving through the American economy. While the PR campaign tells us the brand is a success, the federal government is essentially asking, where are the receipts? This leads us to the final, most dangerous tier of the ladder, the binding ultimatum. The USPTO has not just said no, they have issued a ticking clock. The applicant has been given a strict 90-day window to provide a comprehensive, written response and to amend the fundamental flaws in their filing. This is not a suggestion, it is a legal demand. If this 90-day deadline passes without a satisfactory resolution, the As Ever trademark will be permanently purged from the United States legal system. The brand would lose its legal identity, its protection from competitors, and its standing as a commercial entity. For a project that was supposed to secure a multi-million-dollar future, this is a catastrophic alarm bell moment. As we sit here in June 2026, the countdown has already begun. Behind the scenes, the desperation is reportedly reaching a fever pitch. Can a lifestyle empire survive if it cannot even secure its own name? Or is this legal wall the point where the illusion finally shatters beyond repair? The answer lies in the next 90 days. And the world is watching to see if the Duchess can find a way to navigate a system that cannot be manipulated by a gold package PR deal. To understand the magnitude of the crisis unfolding today, we have to look back at the trail of breadcrumbs left over the past year. What looked like a series of unfortunate events was actually a calculated descent that no amount of expensive branding could stop. The timeline of this collapse is a roadmap of how a global brand can vanish in plain sight when it loses the one thing it cannot buy: genuine public trust. The story begins in the third quarter of 2025 in Los Angeles. At that time, the Sussex PR machine was celebrating a significant victory. YouGov surveys showed Meghan's net approval rating at a solid +15. It was the green light they had been waiting for. With the wind in their sails, the team activated a massive plan to commercialize her lifestyle. This was supposed to be the moment the Duchess became a mogul. By December 2025, the Montecito headquarters were buzzing. The official website for her brand, As Ever, finally went live. The digital servers recorded a staggering 108,000 commercial visits from the United States in the first month alone. On paper, it was a triumph. But as the calendar turned to January 2026, the data began to whisper a different story. While global views remained high, the crucial American market saw a sharp decline to 89,000 visits. The phenomenon of information saturation had begun. The public wasn't just watching, they were getting tired. In March 2026, during an online forum hosted in Geneva focused on child safety, Meghan attempted a strategic move that had worked many times before. She shared intimate, never-before-seen photos of her daughter to humanize the brand. But this time, the reaction from the American public was not one of warmth, it was complete indifference. The commercial recovery they expected never materialized. The family card had been played, and the world simply looked away. The situation turned from a decline to a disaster in April 2026. In New York, the prestigious Newsweek magazine published a devastating media analysis. They laid out the reputation decay in a series of charts that put the Sussex brand in a state of red alert. The credibility that they had fought so hard to maintain was being dismantled by investigative journalism and data-driven facts. By May 2026, the failure was no longer just digital, it was physical. At a major Better Up event in Sydney, Prince Harry took the stage to a room that was hauntingly empty. Out of thousands of available spots, only 150 seats were filled. Corporate partners, who had invested millions for the Sussex Association, began to ask a terrifying question. Is this name a liability instead of an asset? This leads us to June 5, 2026, in Washington, D.C. The United States Patent and Trademark Office officially issued its legal ultimatum. The 90-day countdown began. The legal walls were closing in, and the brand was effectively being held in a state of legal limbo. And that brings us to today, June 11th, 2026. Behind the high walls of the Montecito estate, the atmosphere is reportedly one of panic. A leaked internal audit has just surfaced, revealing a catastrophic drop in cash flow. Sources within the camp whisper that a document has been placed on Meghan's desk, a proposal for a soft shutdown. It is a plan to quietly dissolve the As Ever brand before the legal system or the public can witness a total collapse. The dream of a lifestyle empire is now a nightmare of exit strategies. The question is no longer if the brand will survive, but how they will hide the debris when the lights finally go out. The clock is ticking, and the silence from Montecito is the loudest it has ever been. The collapse of a global brand is rarely a sudden explosion. It is a calculated sequence of failures that feed into one another until the entire structure gives way. What we are witnessing on this 11th of June, 2026, is the final stage of a PR and commercial breakdown that followed three distinct, devastating steps. The first step in this mechanical failure began when the YouGov net approval rating hit that critical floor of +2. This was the silent alarm that triggered a catastrophic 60.8% loss in commercial traffic from the United States. In the world of high-end lifestyle branding, if your core audience stops clicking, the brand stops breathing. This led to the second step, inverse media saturation. As the traffic numbers withered for 3 consecutive months, the strategy shifted to desperation. The Sussex team reportedly forced an increase in the frequency of articles in People magazine, trying to drown out the silence. But instead of attracting buyers, this move caused a rejection reflex from the public. The more the brand pushed, the more the audience pulled away, viewing the constant coverage as an intrusive, artificial attempt to manipulate their tastes. Then came the third and most final step: the legal breaking point. On June 5, 2026, the USPTO issued its formal refusal. This was the hammer that started the 90-day clock, a legal ultimatum that forced the brand into a corner: either dissolve voluntarily or be forcibly cancelled by the federal government. The granular details of this collapse are now coming to light, painting a picture of a dream turning into a bureaucratic nightmare. At exactly 14:15 on June 5, 2026, the formal rejection papers were stamped and filed in Record Room 402 of the Madison Administrative Building in Alexandria, Virginia. While the public saw a coastal kitchen on social media, the federal government was officially marking the As Ever brand as a failure. In the hours that followed, the atmosphere in Montecito was anything but serene. Sources describe a grueling 12-hour window where Meghan was locked in her private office, engaged in emergency video calls with a fleet of trademark lawyers. They weren't discussing recipes or rustic decor. They were debating how to salvage a legal identity that was being systematically dismantled by federal regulators. The scene of the final decision-making shifted from the coast to the city. In Bungalow 4 of the iconic Beverly Hills Hotel, a clandestine meeting took place between a core group of financial advisors and a new crisis PR team. The objective of this meeting was grim. They were there to finalize a cut-loss plan, a strategy to shut down. As ever quietly before, it could become a public symbol of total commercial defeat. To understand why this is happening now, we must look at the financial precedent. Industry experts often compare Meghan's business model to that of Victoria Beckham's fashion empire. However, there is one fatal difference. Victoria Beckham's brand survived years of net losses because it was backed by massive corporate subsidies and a vast family fortune that could absorb the shock. The Sussexes do not have that luxury. Their inheritance is reportedly being drained by the staggering costs of a global PR machine and a multi-million-dollar private security detail. The safety net is gone, with the multi-million-dollar Netflix contract officially set to expire at the end of 2026. The couple is facing a cold reality. Major players like Amazon, Disney, and Paramount have all reportedly declined to sign new deals. There is no new career path, no new contract on the horizon, and the cash flow has reached its breaking point. The illusion of the successful entrepreneur is meeting the reality of the empty account. As the sun sets on June 11th, 2026, the world is left wondering, when the bank accounts run dry and the trademarks are revoked, what is left of the royal dream in Montecito? The strategy has failed, the data is undeniable, and the 90-day clock is still ticking. As we stand here on June 12th, 2026, looking at the debris of a once ambitious commercial empire, the question is no longer whether the As Ever brand is in trouble, but how it will eventually end. The data we have uncovered suggests a branching path of possibilities, a scenario tree that will dictate the future of the Sussexes in America. The stakes have never been higher, and the clock is ticking on every single one of these potential futures. In the first scenario, which analysts give only a 15% chance of success, a mysterious white knight appears. This would involve a high-risk venture capital firm from Silicon Valley stepping in to breathe life into the dying brand. They would essentially agree to foot the massive legal bills required to fight the USPTO and pay for a complete ground-up restructuring and rebranding. It is a long shot, requiring an investor willing to gamble millions on a name that the American public is increasingly ignoring. The second scenario, with a 35% probability, is what insiders call the influencer pivot. This would involve a complete freeze of the As Ever website and commercial operations. Instead of trying to build a retail empire, Meghan would retreat to a solo influencer model. She would use her name to secure high-ticket endorsement deals with established luxury fashion and jewelry houses. This would provide the short-term cash flow needed to maintain their lifestyle in Montecito, but it would signify a permanent retreat from the dream of being a global business mogul. However, the most realistic path, currently sitting at a 50% probability, is the full shutdown. This is the scenario where the As Ever brand is officially euthanized. The reasons for this are grounded in the cold reality of the numbers we have analyzed today. The figure of 42,300 visits from the United States in the last month is a commercial death knell. A brand cannot survive on curiosity alone. It needs customers, and those customers have vanished. Furthermore, the legal pressure from the United States Patent and Trademark Office has created a financial trap. The cost of amending the trademark, fighting the likelihood of confusion claims, and proving actual trade in a stagnant market is reportedly far beyond the current Sussex budget. When the legal fees outweigh the potential profit, the only logical business move is to walk away. The consequences of this total shutdown would be profound, especially for Prince Harry. With the primary commercial engine of their American life failing, experts suggest that the Duke may be forced into a difficult position. Sources close to the situation indicate he may have to unilaterally seek a financial reconciliation with the British royal family to secure his family's long-term stability. The dream of total financial independence is being crushed by the reality of federal filings and declining click-through rates. So, where do we go from here? The 90-day countdown initiated by the USPTO is already in motion. Every second that passes is a second closer to the brand being erased from the Federal Register. Meanwhile, internal audits in California are reportedly revealing the final, dwindling traces of the Sussexes' liquidity. The world is now waiting for a single signature. Will Meghan Markle sign the formal dissolution papers for, as ever, as early as next week in Los Angeles? Or will she attempt one final extreme media maneuver, a wildcard play designed to flip the narrative one last time? The clock is at 0 hour, and the walls are closing in. We are tracking the final movements of this commercial saga in real time. This exclusive investigation into the secret files and the final days of the Montecito dream continues. You are watching the Royal Insider Network. To ensure you don't miss the next update on these leaked audits and the final decision from Los Angeles, make sure to hit the subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications and join the conversation in the comments. Do you think they can turn this around, or is the end inevitable? We will see you in the next deep dive. 4 o'clock and 2 minutes in the morning, April 30th, 2026. While the world sleeps, the British monarchy has just experienced its first digital coup. This is not a drill, and it is not a rumor. At this very moment, the server lights across the Queen Consort's private office have gone dark. Every terminal, every encrypted line, and every cloud-based database connected to Queen Camilla's staff has been disconnected from the royal grid. This is breaking news from London. We are witnessing the activation of the most aggressive internal maneuver in modern Windsor history. It is being called a digital evacuation, but for those inside the palace, the reality is much colder. Prince William, now acting with the full legal weight of the executive prince, has officially moved from a state of transition to a state of total control. Welcome to the morning after the crown shifted. If you want to understand how a 1,000-year-old institution survives the 21st century, you need to look at what happened just hours ago at room 402, number 10 Buckingham Gate. As the sun began to rise, elite agents from the Royal Protection Command's Information Security Unit moved in. Our sources within the Chamberlain's office confirm that exactly 14 high-security hard drives were seized and placed into forensic containment. Before we dive into the secret files recovered this morning, do us a quick favor. If you believe the monarchy needs this kind of modernization, hit that like button right now. It helps us keep these investigations going. And if you are new here, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because this story is moving faster than the official palace press releases can track. What exactly was on those 14 drives? To understand the gravity of this morning's raid, we have to look at Emergency Seizure Order Number, RE 2026. This document, signed by the Prince of Wales at 10:15 yesterday morning, bypassed the traditional advisory councils. It is the legal equivalent of a tactical strike. By signing this, William activated the Asset Freeze Protocol. This is a mechanism designed for times of war or extreme national crisis, but William is using it to perform what insiders are calling a corporate-style purge of the royal household. The immediate consequence is staggering. Queen Camilla has officially lost all access to her private public relations fund, an account valued at over £15 million per year. For years, this fund has been used to manage her image, hire independent consultants, and, as some allege, monitor the media coverage of other royal family members. As of 4 o'clock this morning, that bank account is a frozen asset. We have received a report of a brief, intense exchange that occurred at Clarence House just as the servers were being cut. According to a senior courtier who witnessed the event, a high-ranking aide to the Queen Consort demanded to know on whose authority the digital shutdown was being conducted. The lead security officer did not hesitate. He reportedly held up a digital tablet displaying the prince's signature and replied, quote, "I am not here to negotiate. I am here to execute the orders of the sovereign custodian. Access is denied." End quote. This is the authority staircase in action. First, you have the record. Emergency Seizure Order. R.E. 2026. Second, you have the agency. The Chamberlain's Office, backed by the Information Security Unit. Third, you have the finality of the outcome. The total financial and digital isolation of a sitting Queen Consort. Why did William move so fast? Why didn't he wait for a formal coronation? The answer lies in the £12 billion empire he now fully controls. By taking absolute command of the Duchy of Cornwall, William has achieved a level of financial independence that makes him untouchable by the Treasury or the Cabinet Office. He no longer needs permission. He has the money, he has the land, and now he has the evidence. The raid at Buckingham Gate wasn't just about stopping the spending. It was about what those 14 hard drives contain. We are talking about the Luxembourg hospitality files and the digital footprints of a betrayal that reaches across the Atlantic. As we track these developments live this morning, we want to hear from you. Is William right to take such a hard line against the old guard, or is this a dangerous overreach of power? Drop a comment below with the word execute if you support the prince, or tradition if you think he's going too far. We read every single one of your insights. The rules of the royal game were rewritten in a single morning. The era of the ceremonial heir is dead. In its place stands a leader who understands that power is not given. It is taken through legal precision and financial force. William isn't just protecting the land of the duchy, he is systematically cutting off the oxygen of his rivals. Stay with us. In the next few minutes, we are going to reveal the specific name of the third player found in the deleted logs, the person sitting at William's own table who has been secretly watching the money move. The truth is coming out, and the Windsor legacy will never be the same. The question echoing through the corridors of power this morning is not just what King Charles signed, but why he signed it with such startling clinical speed. To the casual observer, it looks like a father passing the torch due to a health battle. But the forensic reality is far more calculated. King Charles did not simply choose to hand over the keys to the empire. He was met with a legal inevitability, a constitutional trapdoor designed by the late Queen Elizabeth II. This brings us to the high-security artifact that has haunted the palace inner circle since late 2021, the red leather envelope. This was never a standard letter of intent. It was a masterclass in constitutional engineering, a document specifically designed to be opened only when the monarchy faced a specific set of survival triggers. Our investigative team has decoded the mechanism inside this envelope, and the details are chilling in their precision. The How It Works protocol of this heritage lock is broken down into 3 distinct, irreversible steps. First, the activation trigger. This clause states that if the reigning monarch's operational capacity falls below a calculated 40% due to health or external crisis, the document becomes legally binding. Second, the condition. It forces the immediate activation of what is known as Phase 1. Early sovereignty transfer. And third, the consequence. This is the lethal blow to the old guard. It mandates the total and absolute separation of the Prince of Wales's assets from any oversight, coordination, or influence of the Queen Consort. In simple terms, the late Queen built a firewall. She ensured that the moment the crown became vulnerable, the wealth of the future would be locked away where only the direct bloodline could reach it. There is one specific detail within these files that has sent shockwaves through the Queen Consort's staff at Clarence House. On page 3 of the transition statute, right next to the official seal, there is a short, handwritten note in the distinctive script of Queen Elizabeth II. It reads, "For the direct heir only." Those 5 words are a legal guillotine. They effectively strip the Queen Consort of any residual claim or administrative role regarding the Duchy of Cornwall. By defining the inheritance as a bloodline-exclusive asset, Elizabeth II ensured that even if the king wanted to share the strategic management of the £12 billion empire with his wife, he is legally barred from doing so. We have learned of a quiet but intense moment that occurred just before the signing. As the king sat at his desk, his hand hovering over the decree, he reportedly turned to a longtime private secretary and asked, quote, "Is there no room for a joint stewardship?" The answer, delivered after a brief consultation with the Royal Archives, was a firm no. The Prince of Wales was standing by the window, his mask of lethal calm undisturbed. He reportedly told his father, quote, "The protocol was set years ago to ensure the fortress remains intact. We are simply following the map she left for us." By signing that document, Charles wasn't just acknowledging his son's readiness. He was admitting that the executive prince was now the only person with the legal standing to protect the Windsor legacy. This isn't just a family in transition. It is a clinical isolation of power. But as the digital servers for the Queen Consort's office go dark and the financial walls go up, a new mystery is emerging. If the red envelope was meant to protect the bloodline, why did an unauthorized digital ping originate from the Kensington private network just seconds after the seal was broken? Someone was watching the transition in real time, and it wasn't the king. The hunt for the mole has begun, and the trail is leading to a place no one expected. The £12 billion private empire of the Duchy of Cornwall has long been the crown jewel of royal finances, but as of this morning, April 30th, 2026, it has been transformed into a weapon of precision. This is no longer a collection of sleepy pastoral landscapes. Under the command of the executive prince, these 135,000 acres have become the ultimate leverage in an internal war for the future of the monarchy. The most shocking revelation emerging from the palace today is not the size of the estate, but how Prince William is using it to dismantle the old guard. Our sources confirm that William has officially ordered a forensic audit of every pound spent on the Queen Consort's wardrobe and jewellery over the last 24 months. This is a move of unprecedented aggression. He is not just checking receipts. He is cross-referencing these expenses against the direct revenue generated by the Oakage estate, a heritage site he now controls with absolute authority. This is the financial ultimatum. In the past, the lines between the prince's private purse and the wider royal household were often blurred by tradition and familial courtesy. Those days are over. By isolating these accounts, William is sending a clear message. The days of the monarchy serving as a private bank for non-bloodline expenses are finished. To understand the sheer scale of the power William now wields, you have to look beneath the surface of the soil. The 135,000 acres spanning 20 counties are no longer just about farming and high-value London real estate. Under William's secret Green Sovereign initiative, this land has been quietly converted into a high-tech energy grid. We are talking about a massive network of industrial-scale wind farms and thousands of electric vehicle charging stations that William controls 100%. This is the engine of his independence. Because this revenue does not come from the taxpayer-funded sovereign grant, William does not answer to Parliament. He has built a financial fortress that allows him to fund his own security, his own diplomatic missions, and his own social housing projects, without asking for a single penny of oversight. The visual proof of this shift was captured at 10:15 yesterday morning. As William stepped out of the palace, the world expected the usual ceremonial grace. Instead, they saw a man clutching a weathered red folder. In the high-stakes theatre of royal PR, this folder is more significant than any crown. It is the symbol of administrative execution. While others focus on the jewelry and the titles, William is focused on the data. A narrated account from a high-level briefing within the duchy's headquarters reveals the moment the new reality set in. When a senior advisor questioned the optics of auditing the Queen Consort's expenses, William reportedly looked up from his ledger and stated, quote, "The duchy is a trust for the future of the crown, not a revolving credit line for the present. We will find the discrepancies, and we will close them," end quote. This is the clinical reality of the 2026 transition. William is repositioning the monarchy as a lean, efficient, and untouchable corporate entity. He is replacing the era of ceremonial influence with an era of executive dominion. In this new architecture of power, the traditional rules of palace diplomacy have been discarded. As we dig deeper into the Oakage audit, a terrifying pattern is beginning to emerge. The discrepancies aren't just about expensive silks or historic diamonds. They point to a series of wire transfers that were never supposed to be seen, transfers that link the Queen Consort's office to a mysterious hospitality group in Luxembourg. The question is no longer whether William has the power to act. The question is, what did he find in the Oakage logs that made this financial execution so urgent? The answer lies in a set of deleted files that the Kensington whistleblower says will change everything. The balance sheet is talking, and it is telling a story of betrayal. To understand the magnitude of the coup we are witnessing today, we have to look at the 10 days that detonated the old Windsor order. This was not a slow evolution of power, it was a surgical strike, executed with a level of logistical precision that suggests years of planning. By reconstructing the timeline from the 21st to the 30th of April, 2026, we can finally see the trap as it closed around the enemies of the new executive prince. The countdown began on April 21st at Windsor Castle. What was officially described as a private family visit was, in reality, a 4-hour high-stakes summit between King Charles and Prince William. No aides were present, no minutes were taken. Our sources indicate that this was the moment the sovereignty transfer decree was drafted. William reportedly presented his father with a dossier of financial vulnerabilities that made the activation of the Red Envelope Protocol a matter of national security. The king, faced with the forensic reality of the institution's fragility, gave his verbal consent. The shift had begun. 3 days later, on April 24th, the digital alarms were triggered in Luxembourg. An £80 million transaction, originating from a shadowy private fund known as Stag Crown, attempted to clear the Royal Bank's high-security threshold. But the system didn't respond the way the perpetrators expected. The new AI-driven monitoring protocols installed by William's office just months prior flagged the movement as a high-risk breach. The £80 million was frozen mid-transit. The Stag Crown conspiracy, intended to liquidate royal-linked assets before the transfer, had been decapitated by an algorithm. This leads us to the morning of April 26th. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning at Buckingham Palace, King Charles III officially signed the Phase 1 Sovereign Transition Statute. It took less than 5 minutes to rewrite 700 years of history, but it is the 75 minutes that followed that the world will remember. At 10:15, Prince William stepped out of the palace gates. He wasn't wearing a crown, but his presence was absolute. The media described it as a mask of lethal calm. He held a single red folder containing the signed authority to seize every asset under the Duchy of Cornwall. The apprentice had become the master. The tension crossed the Atlantic on April 28th. At a private residence in Santa Barbara, California, Prince Harry reportedly received an encrypted call that lasted exactly 12 minutes. Forensic digital logs suggest the call originated from a burner line linked to the inner circle of Clarence House. Why was someone in the Queen Consort's camp reaching out to the Duke of Sussex at the exact moment the financial walls were closing in? Was it a desperate attempt to coordinate a counter-narrative, or were they seeking a safe harbour for the missing Luxembourg data? Now, we arrive at the current moment, April 30th, 2026. The gates of Clarence House are quiet, but the atmosphere inside is one of total financial isolation. The Queen Consort has been effectively stripped of her strategic reach. Every expense, every advisor, and every communication line is now subject to the oversight of the Prince of Wales's auditors. The digital evacuation we reported earlier this morning was the final blow, the removal of the hard drives that contain the names of those who helped facilitate the Stag Crown transfers. The timeline is clear. In 10 days, William has moved from the shadows of the monarchy to the driver's seat of a £12 billion corporate fortress. He has blocked the money, signed the law, and silenced the opposition. But as the sun sets on this historic morning, a new data point has emerged. A single unauthorized login was recorded from a terminal inside Kensington Palace at 3:45 a.m. Someone close to the prince is still communicating with the outsiders. The war for the crown has been won, but the hunt for the traitor in the inner circle is only just beginning. As the dust settles on the digital raid at Buckingham Gate, the strategic analysts within the Royal Intelligence Unit are now looking at the endgame. The board has been set, and the pieces have moved. But how does this war between the executive prince and the Queen Consort actually conclude? In the high-stakes environment of 2026, the palace does not gamble, they simulate. There are 3 potential paths forward, and the one currently being executed is the most ruthless of them all. The first path is the nuclear option. In this scenario, the Queen Consort chooses to fight back in the open. Our sources indicate that a small, loyalist faction within her former office has suggested using private recordings of King Charles tapes made during the king's most vulnerable moments of his health battle to leverage a return to the Oakage funds. This would be a scorched earth policy. If Camilla chooses this path, it would trigger a constitutional crisis unseen since the abdication. However, William's countermove is already locked in the red folder. The immediate activation of the anticipatory obstruction clause, which would not only strip her of her title, but could legally exile her from all royal residences. The second path is the dignified retreat. This is the middle ground, where a quiet agreement is reached. Camilla would retain her title and a modest public schedule, but would be required to withdraw entirely from the political and financial administration of the monarchy. She would essentially become a ghost within the institution, present for the cameras, but powerless behind the scenes. While this offers the appearance of stability, it leaves the door open for future internal friction. For a leader like William, who operates on the principle of total corporate security, this scenario is viewed as unacceptably leaky. This leads us to the third path, and the one our investigative team believes is currently in motion: the Great Silence. This is the most realistic and clinical outcome of the 2026 transition. According to forensic logs retrieved from the Luxembourg sweep, William now possesses irrefutable evidence of the unauthorized wire transfers from the Stag Crown accounts. Instead of a public trial, this evidence is being used as a legal muzzle. The terms of the Great Silence are reportedly as follows. In exchange for the palace not releasing the full Luxembourg audit to the public or the authorities, the Queen Consort must sign a permanent, ironclad non-disclosure agreement. In return, she will be granted lifelong tenure at a small, secluded residence within the Greystone estate, far from the levers of power in London. She keeps the comfort, but she loses the Crown's checkbook forever. The logic behind this move is pure William. As the executive prince, his priority is the absolute stability of the Vung trio. He understands that a public scandal involving his father's wife would damage the institution's global standing. By using the Great Silence, he achieves a total internal cleansing without a single shot being fired in the press. He is ensuring that no outsider will ever again have the ability to commercialize the heritage of the Windsor bloodline or leverage royal prestige for private investment. A whispered account from a briefing at Windsor Castle last night suggests the deal has already been presented. When asked by a mediator if there was any room for negotiation on the Greystone terms, William reportedly replied with a single devastating sentence. "The audit is complete, and the balance is zero. There is nothing left to discuss." But even as the Great Silence begins to descend, A new shadow is falling over Kensington Palace. If the Queen Consort has been neutralized, why are the forensic monitors still picking up encrypted signals from within William's own private office? The money has been stopped, and the rival has been isolated, but the source of the original betrayal remains active. The question is no longer about the Queen Consort's survival, it's about who is standing right behind the prince, waiting for their own moment to move. While the global headlines focus on the financial collapse of the old guard at Clarence House, a far more dangerous shadow has been caught on camera within the heart of the new regime. As of 11 o'clock this morning, April 30th, 2026, the Royal Protection Command has transitioned from a financial audit to a high-level counter-espionage operation. The battle for the crown was won at the bank, but the battle for the soul of the monarchy is being fought in the dark corridors of Kensington Palace. The turning point occurred during a forensic sweep of the security footage from the Kensington West Corridor, dated just 48 hours ago. At exactly 12:14 a.m., the high-definition thermal cameras captured a sequence that has frozen the blood of the Prince of Wales's inner circle. A young woman, dressed in a nondescript dark coat and wearing oversized black glasses to obscure her features from facial recognition, was seen meeting a known courier for the Luxembourg-based Stag Crown Group. In a movement that lasted less than 3 seconds, a physical USB drive was exchanged. This was not a document drop, it was a total system breach. Our investigative team has learned through a Kensington whistleblower that this specific drive contained the master access codes to William's proprietary land surveillance system, the Sentinel Grid. This grid is the central nervous system of the executive prince's new empire. It monitors every sensor, every wind turbine, and every high-security perimeter across the 135,000 acres of the Duchy of Cornwall. With these codes, the Stag Crown conspirators, those global conglomerates who seek to commercialize the royal heritage, don't just have a seat at the table. They have a bird's-eye view of every strategic move William makes before he even makes it. The psychological impact on the prince has been described as profound. While William was busy auditing the Queen Consort's wardrobe and freezing her PR funds, the real enemy was operating under his own roof. The realization is beginning to dawn on the palace. The traitor is not an outsider. The traitor is someone who sits at William's own dinner table, someone who knows his schedule, his passwords, and his deepest fears for the future of his children. The forensic team is currently cross-referencing the gait analysis data from the footage with the biometric profiles of every resident and frequent guest at Kensington Palace. The list of suspects has been narrowed down to 3 individuals' names so prominent that their exposure will cause a global constitutional earthquake. This individual wasn't just watching the money move, they were facilitating the collapse of the Windsor Fortress from the inside. As the sun sets on this historic day of transition, the mask of lethal calm that William wore this morning has been replaced by a focused, silent rage. He now knows that the great silence he imposed on the Queen Consort was only half the battle. To save the monarchy, he must now perform a surgical strike against his own inner circle. We are standing on the edge of a revelation that will redefine the meaning of loyalty for the next century of the British throne. The Luxembourg files have been decrypted, and the digital trail of the £80 million conspiracy is finally leading home. The identity of the Kensington mole is no longer a matter of if, but when. In exactly 48 hours, we will release the definitive reveal. We will publicize the recovered logs and the name of the person who betrayed the executive prince at his most vulnerable moment. Do not miss this. Hit the subscribe button and turn on all notifications right now. This is a story of a legacy defended and a betrayal that will shock the world. Leave a comment below with the word loyalty if you think William should show no mercy to the traitor, regardless of who they are. Stay tuned. The truth is closer than you think, and the final nail in the coffin of the old guard is about to be driven home. We will see you in 48 hours for the official reveal of the Kensington traitor. At exactly 9:45 a.m. this morning, May 1st, 2026, a black armored motorcade pulled up to the Waldorf Astoria in the heart of Manhattan. Amidst the chaotic symphony of New York City sirens and shouting crowds, King Charles III stepped out with a poise that can only be described as a chilling show of defiance. This is not just a state visit, it is the beginning of an administrative execution. While the world watches the sovereign embrace the American spotlight, 3,000 miles away in Montecito, Prince Harry has just received a notification that effectively strips him of his last remaining shield. A confidential memo from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, coordinated with the United States Secret Service, has officially suspended all of Harry's international security protocols for the duration of the King's stay on American soil. The message to the Duke was silent, surgical, and absolute. Sources close to the situation described the notification as a cold, one-page document stating that the British state no longer recognises the Duke of Sussex as a protected person under international treaty. This morning's events come less than 48 hours after the high-stakes assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Washington. While the world expected the palace to cancel the visit, King Charles gave a direct order to move forward. Royal insiders recount the king's words behind closed doors, stating that the monarchy does not bow to violence and that the mission of statecraft transcends personal safety. This keep calm and carry on mantra is more than just a slogan. It is a strategic PR masterstroke. By standing firm where others would retreat, the king has positioned himself as a courageous head of state, casting a long, dark shadow over his son, who continues to lobby for taxpayer-funded security. If you find this level of royal strategy fascinating, hit that like button right now and subscribe. We are tracking this story second by second, and you do not want to miss the unsealing of the files on June 12th. Comment rule of law below, if you believe no one is above the system. Inside room 502 of the Waldorf Astoria, just 3 hours ago, a high-level briefing took place between British officials and the United States Department of State. The agenda was singular: the total quarantine of the Harry scandal. The New York Signal sent this morning proves that Buckingham Palace has reached a historical breaking point. For the first time in over 1,000 years of monarchy, the Crown has not only stepped back from protecting a prince of the blood, but has actively cleared the path for the American judicial system to treat him as a common resident. The Prince of Wales, William, is reportedly the architect behind this tactical isolation. While the King prepares for a state banquet, William has ensured that the Harry problem is no longer an international diplomatic issue, but a domestic legal irritation for the United States. By stripping Harry of his diplomatic O-own status years ago, and funneling him into a common one visa, the palace has ensured that Washington is now free to investigate him without infringing on sovereign immunity. As of 10:15 a.m. today, the Heritage Foundation's legal team has been notified that the tactical delay of the 2,500-page immigration file is holding firm until June 12th. This specific date was chosen with surgical precision. It falls exactly 48 hours after the king is scheduled to depart American soil. The goal is clear: ensure the legal explosion surrounding Harry's potential visa fraud does not overshadow the majesty of the sovereign's visit. Narrative accounts from the Foreign Office suggest that the king's approval of this hands-off policy was guided by a strict interpretation of the law. One senior official was overheard saying that the privileges of the Crown are reserved for those who serve the Crown. By refusing to intervene in the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, the palace has essentially told the American government that Harry is on his own. The weight of this silence is crushing. Harry is now a man standing alone against a 2,500-page file that could end his American dream. If those documents prove that he failed to disclose his history with illegal substances, which he boasted about in his own memoir, the legal repercussions are mandatory. Visa fraud is a non-discretionary ground for deportation. The irony is profound. The very book he used to attack the monarchy has become the primary evidence for his potential expulsion. The countdown to June 12th has officially begun. The king is in Washington, the prince is in the shadows, and the file is waiting. But as the sirens fade in New York, a new question emerges. What exactly is hidden on page 1200 of that immigration file that has the Department of Homeland Security so terrified? Stay tuned. The administrative execution of a prince does not happen with a bang. It happens with the stroke of a pen on a visa application. While the public focused on the family rift in 2020, a much more dangerous legal machinery was being set in motion behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace. To understand how Harry is now facing potential deportation, we must dismantle the mechanism of what insiders call the diplomatic trap. The first gear was turned 6 years ago. When Harry stepped down as a working royal, the palace made a quiet but absolute decision. They refused to support his application for an Aune diplomatic visa. In the world of international relations, an Aune visa is a suit of armor. It grants high-level sovereign immunity, shielding the holder from local investigations and domestic legal inquiries. If Harry had stayed under an Aune visa, his immigration records would be a matter of state secrets, untouchable by the American judicial system. Instead, the palace funneled him into the one visa category. On the surface, the one is for individuals with extraordinary ability, a title that fits a global celebrity. But beneath the prestige lies a devastating legal reality. An one holder is treated as a common tax resident. They are subject to the full weight of the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. By stripping Harry of his diplomatic status, the monarchy ensured that by 2026, the American government would have the power to investigate him just like any other immigrant. Harry is no longer a representative of a state. He is just another resident subject to the same laws as everyone else. This was the setup. The trigger, however, was pulled by Harry himself. When he published his memoir, he provided the Heritage Foundation with the ultimate roadmap for his own destruction. Under the United States Immigration and Nationality Act, specifically Section 212, admitting to the use of controlled substances is a mandatory ground for inadmissibility. The mechanism works in a cold, 3-step process of administrative entrapment. Step 1. Harry admits to extensive use of cocaine, marijuana, and psychedelic mushrooms in his book. Step 2. The Heritage Foundation files a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, forcing the Department of Homeland Security to compare these public admissions to his confidential DS-160 visa application. Step 3. The activation. If Harry checked no on the mandatory drug use disclosure question to secure his residency, he committed visa fraud. This is not a matter of judicial discretion. In the eyes of the law, visa fraud is a non-discretionary ground for the revocation of residency and subsequent deportation. Because Harry is on an one visa, he has zero diplomatic shield to stop this process. There are no royal letters of protection, no sovereign immunity, and no diplomatic stays. The palace has maintained a policy of positive neutrality, a chilling term that means they are intentionally stepping back to let the American judicial system function without interference. The legal team in London understands this mechanism perfectly. By allowing the clock to run out, they have ensured that if Harry is deported, it is a domestic American issue, not an international crisis involving the king. The Duke of Sussex is no longer a protected asset. He is a legal liability caught in a trap that was oiled and ready to trigger the moment he published his truth. But as the June 12th deadline looms, a disturbing question remains. If the records show that Harry was given a special waiver, who exactly authorized it, and what was promised in return? The files are waiting. The clock has entered its final, most dangerous phase. For the Duke of Sussex, the countdown to June 12th is no longer a theoretical threat, it is a geopolitical guillotine. To understand the gravity of this morning's breaking news from Washington, we must look at the surgical precision of the timeline that has systematically erased Harry from the institutional memory of the British state over the last 7 days. It began on April 25th, at the Cenotaph in London. In a move that sent shockwaves through royal circles, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood as the primary representative for the king and her husband during the Anzac Day tributes. but it was a single gesture that confirmed Harry's permanent replacement. When signing the official guest book, Catherine signed her name first, followed by William. This was not a breach of protocol, it was a masterclass in institutional continuity. By placing the princess at the forefront of a military tribute so closely associated with Harry's former life, the palace signaled to the world that the machine is fully operational without the spare. The void Harry left behind has been filled, sealed, and modernized. 24 hours later, on April 26th, the narrative shifted violently in Washington. In the wake of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, the political landscape in the United States crystallized. Trump's public declaration, calling King Charles a brave and great ambassador, while simultaneously dismissing Harry as a man who represents nothing of the United Kingdom, has effectively stripped away the Duke's remaining cultural capital. This endorsement of the sovereign by a potential future president creates a law and order pincer movement. Trump is using Harry as a symbol of elite exemption, forcing the current administration to prove that the rule of law applies even to a prince of the blood. That brings us to today, May 1st. At 9 a.m. in Washington, D.C., the United States Department of State finalized a tactical delay that serves as the final brick in Harry's isolation wall. The 2,500-page immigration file, which was supposed to be reviewed this week, has been officially pushed to June 12th. This delay is not a reprieve for Harry, it is a quarantine for the king. By ensuring the records remain sealed until after the state visit, the palace and the State Department have ensured that the majesty of the sovereign is not stained by the impending legal explosion of his son. The next critical milestone is set for May 25th. As King Charles and Queen Camilla prepare for a historic tea at the White House, a 10-mile diplomatic exclusion zone has been reportedly established. Harry is not just uninvited, he is being legally and physically barred from the vicinity of all official state engagements. The sovereign represents the nation, while the Duke has been relegated to a domestic legal irritant, watching from the sidelines as his family defines the special relationship between two superpowers. Everything leads to June 12th Judgment Day. This is when the 2,500-page file will be unsealed. The contents will reveal one of two things. Either Harry was granted a rare, undisclosed waiver for his admitted drug use, or he checked no on his application, committing mandatory deportable visa fraud. The palace's silence throughout this 42-day countdown is their most powerful weapon. They have moved on. They have replaced him. And on June 12th, they will let the American judicial system decide if the man who attacked the crown still has a place in the country he calls sanctuary. But as the king lands in Washington, the question is no longer about Harry's future, it's about what the king knew regarding those files before he left London. The true weight of a man's future can sometimes be measured in paper. In a high-security vault within the District of Columbia Court, a 2,500-page dossier sits waiting for June 12th. This is not just a collection of administrative notes. It is the definitive forensic record of Prince Harry's entry into the United States. At the heart of this massive file is one single, terrifying document, the DS-160 visa application. For every immigrant, this form is a sacred vow of truth. For Harry, it has become a judicial guillotine. The authority staircase leading to this moment is built on three immovable pillars. First, the document itself, the DS-160, contains a specific question regarding the use of controlled substances. Second, the agency involved, the Department of Homeland Security, is now under a court-ordered mandate to justify why these records should remain private. And third, the mechanism of mandatory revocation. Under United States immigration law, the Department of Justice does not have the luxury of mercy if visa fraud is proven. If a person admits to drug use in a memoir but checks no on their federal application, the law dictates an automatic and mandatory revocation of residency. In the corridors of Washington power, the Heritage Foundation has argued with devastating clarity that the rule of law must be blind to royal titles. Their legal team has highlighted the profound irony of Harry's situation. The very same admissions of cocaine, marijuana, and psychedelic mushroom use that he used to sell books are now being used as the primary evidence to dismantle his American sanctuary. Sources within the Department of Justice suggest that the file contains internal DHS memos questioning the consistency of Harry's declarations as early as 2021. These memos, spanning hundreds of pages, reportedly document the internal struggle between granting a celebrity waiver and following standard enforcement protocols. The political atmosphere surrounding this file turned toxic just hours ago. Donald Trump, speaking to a captivated media pack in the Capitol, delivered what many are calling the political kill shot to Harry's residency. Trump's statement was blunt and uncompromising. "I know Harry doesn't speak for the United Kingdom. In fact, I think I speak for the UK more than Harry." By positioning himself as a more authentic representative of British American interests than a prince of the blood, Trump has effectively de-royalized Harry in the eyes of the American public. Harry is no longer a visiting dignitary. He is an immigration suspect caught in a partisan firestorm. This is the ultimate trap for a man who branded himself as a champion of transparency. Harry is now caught between the public record he created himself and the private record held by the federal government. Throughout this morning, the palace's response to inquiries about the mandatory revocation mechanism has been reduced to a single icy refrain. "We do not comment on the private legal matters of the Duke of Sussex. This silence is a strategic weapon." By refusing to offer a character reference or a diplomatic plea for leniency, the King and Prince William have allowed the American judicial system to function without interference. The mechanism is now in motion, and it is self-executing. If the unsealing on June 12 reveals a discrepancy, the Department of Homeland Security will be forced to trigger a removal process to avoid charges of extreme favoritism. The prince has been reduced to a file number, and the pages are turning. But as the legal pressure mounts, an even darker reality is emerging within Harry's inner circle, a financial and social quarantine that is turning his California dream into a liquidation trap. Who is left to stand by him when the file finally speaks? While the King and Queen sit down for tea in the state dining room of the White House this afternoon, the atmosphere 3,000 miles away in Montecito is one of quiet, expensive desperation. For Prince Harry, the loss of his royal shield is no longer a matter of pride, it has become a matter of survival. Financial analysts are now identifying a phenomenon they call the liquidation trap, a direct consequence of the king's unwavering policy of detachment. The nightmare began the moment the Aoni diplomatic visa was officially off the table. On American soil, the difference between a visiting royal and a private resident is measured in millions of dollars. When Harry was a working member of the family, his security was a matter of international treaty, coordinated by the State Department and local law enforcement at no personal cost. Today, he is a private citizen forced to hire his own mercenary-grade security teams. These private contractors lack the legal authority of federal agents, yet they charge a premium that is reportedly exceeding $2 million every single quarter. But the security bill is only the first leak in a sinking ship. By being funneled into the one visa category, Harry has become a common tax resident in the eyes of the Internal Revenue Service. Without the sovereign immunity that once protected his global assets, the IRS is now moving with characteristic aggression to audit his worldwide earnings, including the remnants of his multi-million-dollar media deals. In Hollywood and Silicon Valley, the currency of power is access. As it becomes clear that Harry has zero access to the king and that the British government is actively coordinating his isolation, his value as a business partner is evaporating. The major media deals that once promised a life of independent wealth are reportedly reaching a point of diminishing returns. The Sussex brand was built on the prestige of the 1,000-year-old institution Harry left behind. Without the active endorsement of the crown, he is no longer the glamorous bridge to the monarchy. He is a liability facing a federal investigation. Industry insiders suggest that the once massive content contracts are being quietly restructured or allowed to expire, leaving the Duke with a lifestyle that costs millions to maintain, but a dwindling income stream to support it. Harry is essentially trapped in a gilded cage of his own making. He is paying for an illusion of power that is being systematically dismantled by the very government he pays taxes to. The financial drain is being compounded by the mounting legal fees from the Heritage Foundation lawsuit, a case he must now fight as a private individual, without a single royal lawyer in his corner. Every headline about his immigration status further devalues his brand, creating a downward spiral where he must spend more on PR and legal defense to protect a reputation that is being shredded by his own past admissions. As the king raises a porcelain cup in Washington, symbolizing the endurance of the crown, Harry is forced to review security invoices and tax filings. The contrast is a physical manifestation of his deleted status. He is a man who traded a lifetime of sovereign immunity for a fleeting moment of celebrity exposure, and the bill has finally come due. He is watching his American dream turn into an administrative liquidation, where the family he once tried to overshadow is the same family that ensured the legal and financial mechanisms were in place to let him fall. But as his assets are squeezed and his circle tightens, a new and even more chilling possibility is being whispered in the corridors of the State Department. What happens if the June 12th unsealing reveals not just a lie, but a secret agreement that Harry has already broken? As we stand on the threshold of this unprecedented legal storm, the question is no longer if the truth will come out, but how the wreckage will be managed. On this morning of May 1st, 2026, the geopolitical chessboard is set, and the possible outcomes for the Duke of Sussex have been narrowed down to three distinct, high-stakes paths. The first, and most volatile, is the worst-case scenario, sitting at a 20% probability. If the unsealing on June 12th confirms definitive visa fraud, the administrative guillotine could drop within 24 hours. By June 13th, Harry could find himself facing an immediate removal order, escorted to a private terminal for a flight to a destination that no longer feels like home. The chilling reality of this scenario is that Buckingham Palace has already closed the gates. By filling every administrative and military role Harry once held, the Crown has ensured there is no sanctuary waiting for him in the United Kingdom. He would become, in every legal sense, a man without a country, a prince in exile, with nowhere to land. The second path, with a 30% probability, is a state of reputational bankruptcy. In this scenario, Harry launches a massive legal counteroffensive against the United States government to block his deportation. While this would buy him time, it creates a liquidation trap of a different kind. The legal fees would be astronomical, draining his remaining assets, while the discovery phase of a lawsuit would force even more private, damaging data into the public record. He would remain in America, but he would be a ghost of his former self trapped in a permanent cycle of litigation, his brand permanently associated with fraud and elite desperation. However, the most likely scenario, holding a dominant 50% probability, is what insiders are calling the royal quarantine. As the political landscape in Washington shifts toward a more hardline, law and order administration, Harry's immigration file becomes the ultimate piece of leverage. Instead of a messy deportation that could complicate the special relationship, the United States government, with the silent consent of the palace, may use the threat of the 2,500-page file to force Harry into total, absolute media silence. He becomes a political hostage in California, permitted to stay only if he ceases his attacks on the monarchy and retreats from the global stage. For the palace, this is the perfect solution. They do not want him back in London causing domestic chaos. They want him isolated, neutralized, and irrelevant. The reason the King and Prince William have chosen this path is clinical. The Crown values institutional survival over familial sentiment. By allowing the American system to hold the sword over Harry's head, they have successfully outsourced the management of a wayward son to a foreign power. While the King's aircraft prepares to lift off from Washington, leaving behind the cheers of the American public and the majesty of a successful state visit, that 2,500-page dossier remains locked in a federal vault. The countdown to June 12th is accelerating. Harry may still walk the grounds of his Montecito estate, lun-trone the paparazzi and the noise of the city, but he cannot escape the forensic reality of the words he signed his name to. The door to his American sanctuary is swinging shut, and the man holding the key is the very sovereign he thought he could overshadow. Who will be left standing when the seals are broken? Make sure you are subscribed to this channel to be the first to see our breakdown of the unsealed files on June 12th. This is the most significant royal legal event of the century, and we will be here for every second of the fallout. Like this video if you believe the rule of law must apply to everyone, and comment below with which scenario you think will play out. The truth is coming, and the House of Windsor has already moved on. See you in the next update. The time is exactly 0800 hours, Eastern Standard Time, May 1st, 2026. While the world's cameras are currently fixed on the north portico of the White House for the arrival of King Charles III, a very different kind of history is being written 5 hours away in the suffocating silence of Montecito. The image of the star-crossed lovers who conquered Hollywood is gone. In its place is a tactical collapse that no amount of expensive PR can mask. As you watch this, the Duchess of Sussex is reportedly trapped within the walls of her 16-bedroom estate, not by choice, but by a catastrophic failure of her own narrative. The lights in the left wing of the mansion, specifically in Meghan's signature beige-toned office, have not been turned off for 3 days. At exactly 2:15 a.m. this morning, a high-encrypted file arrived from her legal counsel. The message was cold, clinical, and final. The draft press release is rejected. The risk of global litigation is absolute. We cannot protect you from the Trevor files. Witnesses close to the estate describe a scene of total isolation. One former staffer, who walked away from the Sussex camp just 48 hours ago, recounted the moment the reality set in. They describe Meghan staring at her reflection in a darkened window, whispering to an empty room. How did the king make me invisible in my own country? Before we dive into the classified details of this 2026 meltdown, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications. We are tracking this story as it unfolds in real time, and you do not want to be the last to know when the final document drops. If you think the royal silence is louder than words, drop a team truth in the comments below. The contrast today is a masterclass in power dynamics. King Charles is currently being welcomed in Washington, D.C. with the full military honors of a state visit, embodying the permanence and soft power of the British monarchy. Meanwhile, in California, the Duchess is facing the A-list exodus. For years, names like Oprah Winfrey and Serena Williams were the steel pillars of the Sussex fortress. But look at the data from early 2026. The social registry has been wiped clean. Insiders claim that Meghan's recent attempts to coordinate a counter-programming event to the King's visit were met with a series of read receipts and no replies. When she reportedly reached out to her old inner circle to secure a public statement of support, the response from a junior assistant to one Hollywood mogul was a polite but lethal, "Our schedule is fully committed to the state visit engagements." One source close to the Montecito estate reported a private exchange that occurred on the afternoon of April 30th. Meghan allegedly demanded a conference call with her top 3 celebrity allies. After 40 minutes of waiting on a silent line, she turned to her remaining assistant and said, "They aren't coming back, are they?" The assistant had no answer. The silence from Hollywood is the most expensive sound the Duchess has ever heard. This is a tactical retreat that has turned into a total blockade. For the last 5 years, the narrative was that Meghan was the one doing the cutting off. She cut off her father, her former friends, and the royal family. But on this morning of May 1st, the script has flipped. The world has cut off the Duchess. The most terrifying part for the Montecito team is the Trevor factor. The man who knew her before the cameras were ever turned on is no longer a ghost. He is a looming deposition. Without the protection of an ironclad non-disclosure agreement, Trevor Engelson's alleged cooperation with high-level journalists has turned Meghan's office into a war room with no weapons left to fire. She is sitting in that beige room, surrounded by rejected drafts and trademark disputes, while the King of England dines with the President. The strategy was to be the Queen of America. But as of this morning, she is the prisoner of a 16-bedroom mansion with a phone that has stopped ringing. Is this the end of the Sussex brand, or just the beginning of a much darker chapter? The files we've obtained regarding the Toronto years suggest that what Trevor knows could dismantle the very foundation of her royal standing. Stay tuned. The next hour of this investigation will reveal the specific emails from 2013 that Meghan thought were deleted forever. Like this video if you want the truth exposed, and tell us in the comments, do you think the King's visit to the US was the final nail in the Montecito coffin? The evidence is coming up next. To understand why the air inside the Montecito mansion has turned radioactive, you have to look at a single, glaring legal oversight that Meghan Markle cannot erase. In the world of high-stakes reputation management, there is a mechanism known as the Non-Disclosure Agreement, or the NDA. It is the invisible fence that keeps secrets inside. Every assistant, every security guard, and every nanny who has ever stepped foot on the Sussex estate has been forced to sign one. But there is a massive, gaping hole in this perimeter, and his name is Trevor Engelson. This is the ghost loophole. It is a three-step sequence of legal negligence that has finally matured in May 2026. To see the magnitude of this threat, we have to look at the clinical reality of 2013. When Meghan and Trevor divorced, she was a cable television actress on a show with a modest following. Their separation was handled through a standard civil filing in Los Angeles. There was no royal oversight, no international security protocols, and most importantly, no lifelong silence clause. The mechanism worked like this. In Step 1, 2013, they signed a standard settlement. It divided their assets and their pets. But it did not contemplate a future where one party would become the most scrutinized woman on the planet. Meghan reportedly believed that a simple divorce was enough to bury the Toronto years forever. She was wrong. By Step 2, in 2018, as she prepared to walk down the aisle of St. George's Chapel, a new layer of security was activated. The firm implemented ironclad NDAs for everyone currently in her orbit. But here is the legal wall. You cannot retroactively force an ex-husband to sign a gag order for a marriage that ended 5 years prior without his consent and a massive financial settlement. Trevor Engelson reportedly refused to take the bait. He didn't want the money. He wanted his dignity. For years, he was the ghost in the machine, a man who held the blueprints to the original Meghan Markle while she was busy building the Duchess version. Now, we have reached Step 3. Early 2026. The expiration date on Trevor's silence has been reached. Insiders suggest that a top-tier publishing house has offered a deal that doesn't just ask for a memoir, it asks for a correction of the record. For over a decade, Trevor watched as the history of their marriage was rewritten, minimized, and eventually deleted from the official royal narrative. In the world of Hollywood production, Trevor knows that the best stories aren't the ones you make up, they are the ones people tried to bury. The Duchess's legal team, including the formidable minds at Harbottle and Lewis, who often represent the Crown, has spent the last month conducting a frantic audit of the 2013 filings. The conclusion they reached at 3 a.m. last Tuesday was devastating. They reportedly confirmed to the Montecito office that they have zero legal standing to stop Trevor Engelson from discussing any event, conversation, or document that occurred before her royal marriage in 2016. He is a legal free agent. This is the Toronto truth that keeps the Duchess awake. Trevor doesn't just have memories, he has the digital breadcrumbs of a woman in the middle of a radical reinvention. Why did he wait 13 years to speak? Why is the timing of this memoir deal perfectly aligned with the collapse of the Sussex business empire in 2026? The answers are hidden in a series of emails Trevor reportedly kept from the FedEx era. As the sun sets over California today, the Duchess isn't just fighting a PR war with the king. She is fighting a battle against a man who saw her before the script was ever written. And according to those who have seen the preliminary table of contents for Trevor's project, the most dangerous chapter isn't about her ambition. It's about a specific medical timeline that contradicts everything the world thinks it knows about the royal bloodline. The shadow is growing longer, and the ghost is about to start talking. To understand the magnitude of the crisis unfolding today, May 1st, 2026, one must look past the glossy magazine covers and examine the mechanical precision of a decade-long operation. This is not a series of unfortunate events. It is a timeline of calculation that has finally hit a wall of reality. When you map out the movements of the Duchess over the last 15 years, a pattern emerges, one that Trevor Engelson is reportedly ready to document in forensic detail. The blueprint begins in October 2011 on the beaches of Jamaica. This was the moment Meghan Markle tied her future to Trevor Engelson. To the casual observer, it was a 4-day celebration. To those analyzing the Trevor files, it was the establishment of a vital logistics hub. Trevor was a thriving producer with a deep network. He provided the financial and social scaffolding that allowed a cable actress to bypass the traditional Hollywood gatekeepers. The immediate consequence of this union was Meghan's entry into a world of power players she could never have accessed alone. But the most pivotal moment in this timeline occurred in August 2013, in the cold, clinical setting of a Toronto filming set. While Trevor remained in Los Angeles, he received a registered FedEx package. Inside was no legal explanation, only Meghan's wedding and engagement rings. This cold exit was a tactical maneuver designed to prevent any face-to-face negotiation. However, it triggered an unforeseen countermeasure: the transformation of Trevor from a supportive husband into a silent archivist. Feeling blindsided, he reportedly began preserving every email, every text, and every digital interaction from that era as a form of reputation insurance. Fast forward to July 2016 in London. The public narrative speaks of a blind date and a chance encounter at a private members club. But the 2026 investigative reports suggest a much more strategic operation. Insiders from the Toronto years have whispered about a vision board that sat in the corner of her apartment, a board that reportedly had Prince Harry at its center long before the two ever met. The consequence was the activation of a long-term plan. Harry wasn't just a husband. He was a global platform that could never be cancelled. However, every calculation has a margin for error. In January 2026, the Duchess attempted to launch her latest venture, as ever, from her Montecito estate. The brand was supposed to be her ultimate professional pivot, but it immediately ran into a high-stakes legal row in Europe. Civic leaders in the small Spanish town of Porreres, Mallorca, officially flagged the brand's logo as an alleged plagiarism of their ancient coat of arms. The immediate consequence was a legal crisis in the European Union, freezing her trademark applications and revealing a staggering lack of due diligence in her new empire. Now, we arrive at the current moment, May 1st, 2026. As King Charles conducts a high-profile state visit in Washington and New York, the isolation of the Sussexes is total. The King's refusal to acknowledge his son's presence on American soil has stripped Meghan of her final negotiation card. For years, she leveraged her connection to the British throne to maintain her status in California. But as the King meets with world leaders and cultural icons, the Duchess is being treated as a private citizen with an expiring brand. This timeline shows that while the Duchess was busy calculating her next move, the man she left behind in 2013 was waiting for the right moment to reveal the original script. The question haunting Montecito today is not about the King's visit. It is about what happened in that 3-year gap between the FedEx package and the London date. Trevor reportedly has the timestamps, and the world is finally checking the clock. The ultimate miscalculation wasn't the brand or the business, it was assuming that the past stays buried when the receipts are still in the cloud. The most explosive element of the Trevor Engelson files, the one that has reportedly sent the Montecito legal team into a state of total paralysis this May morning, does not involve money or infidelity. It involves biology. For years, the darker corners of the internet have whispered about discrepancies in the official birth narratives of the Sussex children. But in 2026, those whispers have met a formidable wall of archival data. Trevor Engelson is not just an ex-husband. He is a primary witness to a medical history that Meghan Markle reportedly tried to redact from existence. To understand the weight of these biological receipts, we must look at a document that first surfaced as a rumor but has now been corroborated by high-level investigative sources: the 2011 pregnancy contract. According to those who have seen the leaked drafts, before Meghan and Trevor married in Jamaica, she reportedly insisted on a clinical agreement. This wasn't about love, it was about logistics. The contract allegedly stipulated that in the event of a pregnancy, Trevor would be legally bound to pay for a personal trainer, a nutritionist, and a round-the-clock nanny to ensure Meghan's physical brand remained intact. This document provides a terrifying window into a mindset of extreme calculation. It suggests that even 15 years ago, the act of bringing life into the world was viewed by the future Duchess as a high-stakes PR operation. But the contract is only the first step on the authority staircase. The second step is far more dangerous. Investigative journalists in Toronto have reportedly spent the early months of 2026 cross-referencing archival data from premier maternity and fertility clinics in the Ontario area from 2012. Trevor Engelson allegedly holds a specific set of fertility check records from this period, documents that were reportedly filed during a time when the couple was struggling to navigate the pressures of their bicoastal marriage. If these records contain information regarding a specific medical procedure or a biological reality that contradicts the official timeline of her later pregnancies, the implications are nuclear. We are no longer talking about Hollywood drama. We are talking about a constitutional crisis. Under British law, any child in the line of succession must be born of the body. If Trevor's receipts provide forensic evidence of a medical history that makes the official story of Archie and Lilibet's births biologically inconsistent, the matter moves out of the hands of PR firms and into the hands of the British Constitutional Council. The legal mechanism is cold and unforgiving. If a contradiction is proven, the council is triggered to conduct a forensic audit of the royal bloodline. The immediate consequence would be a challenge to the titles and the standing of the entire Sussex family. This is the secret that reportedly has Meghan petrified in her Montecito office. She can dismiss a tabloid reporter, and she can ignore a disgruntled staffer, but she cannot ignore a clinical record with a 2012 timestamp. The question that remains, as the sun reaches its peak on this 1st of May, is why Trevor Engelson kept these files for 13 years. Was it for protection, or was it because he knew that one day, the woman who sent his rings back via FedEx would try to rewrite the very nature of reality? The world is now looking at a decade-long narrative and wondering if they were watching a fairy tale or a meticulously directed biological heist. The truth isn't just in the emails anymore. It's in the DNA of the records Trevor reportedly refused to burn. Every second that King Charles spends in Washington, the clock ticks louder on the files that could dismantle a dynasty. What exactly did the doctors in Toronto record in 2012? The answer may be the final word on the House of Sussex. Behind the manicured hedges and high-security gates of the Montecito estate, the image of a polished, global humanitarian is dissolving into a reality of pure, high-stakes chaos. This is not a matter of tabloid speculation, it is a matter of record. As of this morning, May 1st, 2026, the internal infrastructure of the Duchess of Sussex's professional world has reached a definitive breaking point. To understand the collapse of the Sussex brand, one must look at the rate of attrition within her inner circle. the numbers are staggering. Over the last several years, 18 senior staffers, specialists in PR, logistics, and legal strategy, have walked away from the mansion. But it is the 19th departure that has sent the most violent shockwaves through the industry. On the morning of Monday, April 28, 2026, her newly appointed Director of Global Communications reportedly cleared their desk and resigned with immediate effect. The catalyst for this latest exit was the explosive confrontation regarding the As Ever lifestyle brand. The PR team had reportedly warned the Duchess for weeks about the legal vulnerabilities of the logo, citing its surreal similarities to the ancient coat of arms of Poreres, a small town in Spain. According to insiders, Meghan's response was not one of professional concern, but of absolute defiance. She reportedly viewed the trademark rejection not as a branding error, but as a coordinated act of institutional sabotage orchestrated by the palace. This sabotage delusion is the core mechanism driving the internal self-destruction at Montecito. The Duchess reportedly believes that every business failure, from the overpriced jams to the trademark disputes, is a deliberate hit job directed from London. However, the reality described by those on the inside is far more clinical. They describe an environment of high-stakes terror, where a single dissenting opinion is viewed as an act of betrayal. The most chilling detail to emerge from the estate involves the soundproofed gym in the North Wing. Former staffers have begun to refer to this space as the Rage Room. On the afternoon the news broke regarding Trevor Engelson's alleged $20 million memoir deal, witnesses claim the atmosphere inside the house became unbearable. While the exterior of the mansion remained a picture of California serenity, the soundproofed walls of the gym were reportedly tested to their limit. Staffers recounted hearing muffled, guttural screams echoing through the corridors as the Duchess processed the reality of her ex-husband's return to the narrative. In that moment, the woman who had meticulously directed her own rise to fame realized she had lost control of the lead actor in her past life. One former aide, speaking on the condition of total anonymity, stated that the most terrifying thing wasn't the anger, it was the total lack of a plan. The master of PR was suddenly a victim of the very news cycle she once thought she owned. The mechanism of this collapse is a closed loop. The more the Duchess tries to control the narrative, the more the narrative fractures. By blaming external enemies for her business roadblocks, she has created a blind spot that is now being exploited by the Trevor files. She is fighting a ghost war with King Charles in Washington, while the real threat is already inside the perimeter. Documented in the emails and records Trevor refused to delete in 2013. As the world watches the King's state visit today, the As Ever brand sits in a state of legal limbo. And the Montecito office is a skeleton crew of traumatized survivors. The director has lost her cast, her script is being rewritten by an ex-husband, and the soundproofed walls are no longer enough to hide the cracks. The question isn't whether the brand will fail, it's whether there will be anyone left to turn out the lights. The receipts are coming, and the Rage Room is silent for the first time in weeks. The quiet is far more ominous than the screams. As the final hours of May 1st, 2026, draw to a close, the question hanging over the global media landscape is no longer if the Sussex narrative will collapse, but how. We are looking at a scenario tree where every branch leads back to a single point of failure: the truth held by Trevor Engelson. Based on the intelligence gathered from the Montecito inner circle and the legal maneuvers in London, 3 distinct futures are now unfolding for the Duchess. The first, and most explosive, is the nuclear scenario. If Trevor Engelson moves forward with his memoir in September 2026, the fallout will be institutional. Should his biological receipts and Toronto files provide evidence of a decade-long deception regarding her medical history and the circumstances of her entry into the royal family, the palace will be forced into a defensive crouch. To protect the integrity of the line of succession, the king would have no choice but to initiate the formal process of stripping the Duchess title. In this version of reality, Meghan Markle becomes a B-list cautionary tale. a former royal relegated to the fringes of reality television, stripped of the very status she spent millions to acquire. The second path is the legal quagmire. In this scenario, Meghan uses the last of her dwindling resources to launch a massive litigation campaign against Trevor and his publishers. But as any legal expert will tell you, a trial requires discovery. A lawsuit would force every private email, every deleted text, and every non-disclosure agreement from the last 13 years into the public record. She would be attempting to burn the house down to hide the fire, exposing her most intimate calculations in an open courtroom. The As Ever brand would be buried under the weight of legal fees, and the Duchess would be remembered not for her lifestyle empire, but for a public cross-examination that she cannot win. Finally, we look at the most realistic scenario, the Great Disappearance. As the As Ever brand continues to face trademark rejections and plagiarism rose in Europe, the financial pressure becomes unsustainable. Insiders are already whispering that Prince Harry is looking for an exit strategy, a return to London, to reclaim his military roots and his family's protection, even if it means doing so alone. Meghan would be left in the Montecito mansion, keeping the keys to a 16-bedroom fortress but losing her grip on global influence. She would live in the ultimate Hollywood nightmare. The silence of a phone that no longer rings, and a world that has simply moved on to the next story. But as we sit here on the night of May 1st, there is one piece of evidence that renders all of her PR defenses useless. Meghan Markle famously told the world she didn't know much about the British royal family before she met Harry. She portrayed herself as the naive American outsider. But Trevor Engelson reportedly holds the ultimate narrative killer. It is a photograph from the early 90s, of 15-year-old Meghan Markle standing directly in front of the gates of Buckingham Palace. Those who have seen the image say it isn't just a tourist photo. It is the look in her eyes, the focused, unwavering gaze of a teenager who had already pinned a target to the center of her vision. The vision board didn't start in Toronto in 2012. It started 3 decades ago. The blind date was the final act of a play that had been in rehearsal since childhood. Tonight, in Montecito, the lights remain on, but she isn't drafting a new business plan. She is watching the shadows of the Toronto years grow longer. The final secret isn't in a London palace or a California mansion. It is in a digital folder Trevor Engelson has guarded since 2013, and we have just obtained the access code to that timeline. This story is evolving by the minute. If you want to see the forensic breakdown of that 2012 fertility record and the emails that contradict the royal birth narrative, you must stay connected. Click the subscribe button and turn on all notifications right now. This is a developing investigation, and the most protected files are about to be opened. Like this video to demand the full transparency the public deserves. What do you think Trevor's ultimate goal is? Drop your theory in the comments. The truth behind the spotlight is finally coming home. We will see you in the next update. The clock is ticking. The wheels of the Royal Voyager touch the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base. It is precisely 09:30 a.m. on April 30, 2026. Outside the perimeter, Washington, D.C. is a fortress under a Level 5 security lockdown. The air is thick with the sound of sirens and the heavy beat of military rotors. Just 48 hours ago, an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump sent a shockwave through the global political structure. The American capital is reeling. Half the world expected the British monarch to turn back. But as the stairs are rolled to the cabin door, the message is clear. King Charles III is not just visiting. He is defying the chaos. This is not a scheduled diplomatic encounter. This is a high-stakes power play executed in the middle of a literal tinderbox. While the Secret Service scrambles to secure the National Mall, the king emerges. He is calm. He is composed. He is intentionally visible. To understand the gravity of this moment, we have to look back 48 hours to a windowless room in 10 Downing Street. At 0800 hours on April 28, a high-priority telegram was dispatched with the classification Operation Golden Scepter. It was a direct communication between the British Prime Minister and the palace. The intelligence was grim. Security analysts from the Secret Service and the Royal Protection Command, known as SO-14, had calculated the risk. The probability of a secondary security breach in the capital was rated at 75%. According to the Protocol of 1952, any state visit must be aborted if the host nation cannot guarantee total control over the environment. The government urged a postponement. They cited the volatile international situation and the domestic unrest following the Pennsylvania shooting. But then, the mechanism of the monarchy shifted. A senior royal aide recounted the moment the king received the final briefing. The aide whispered that when the Prime Minister suggested the king stay in London, Charles looked at the security file, pushed it aside, and replied with chilling finality, "A sovereign does not hide when the world is in shadows. If our friends are in pain, that is exactly when we show our face." With that one sentence, the king overrode 7 decades of security precedent. He signed the executive order to proceed, effectively placing himself in the center of the most dangerous diplomatic mission of his reign. If you believe the king is making the right choice by standing firm, hit the like button right now. If you think this risk is too high for the future of the monarchy, let us know in the comments. We are tracking this breaking story as it develops, so make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next classified update. The tension on the ground in Washington is palpable. Every street corner is occupied by National Guard units. The King's motorcade is a mile-long chain of armored steel. But why now? Why would Charles risk everything for a visit to a city in mourning and anger? The answer lies in the C staircase of the British Embassy, where officials were heard discussing the true purpose of this trip. It is not about the tea or the ceremonies. It is about the 250th anniversary of American independence. The king knows that the special relationship is at a breaking point. With the US government distracted by internal threats, British influence has begun to slip. By landing today, Charles is leveraging what experts call the Churchillian factor. He is positioning himself as the only stable anchor in a sea of political madness. But as the motorcade moves toward the White House, a shadow remains. While the king walks into the line of fire, his son, Prince Harry, remains in a state of diplomatic isolation. Insiders at the State Department have confirmed that British officials issued a quiet but firm memorandum to American authorities. The memo stated that any public statements made by the Duke of Sussex regarding US policy or Ukraine are to be treated as private opinions with zero constitutional weight. The contrast is brutal. One royal is being protected by the full might of the United States military as a head of state. The other is being pushed to the margins of the conversation. As we watch the king enter the north portico of the White House, the question is no longer about security. It is about the message sent to the enemies of the West. Charles is proving that the crown does not flinch. But as this historic meeting begins, a secret development is unfolding back in London. A signature on a document at the cenotaph by the Princess of Wales has triggered a new internal protocol. While the king is in Washington, the power structure at home has quietly evolved. The motorcade has just come to a halt. The world is watching. Stay tuned. To understand why the king is walking into a city paralyzed by fear today, we must look at the cold, hard trajectory of the bullets that define his past and this present moment. This is the blueprint of a man who does not react to violence the way ordinary men do. Let us examine the record. On January 26, 1994, in Sydney, Australia, the then Prince of Wales stood on a stage at Darling Harbour. 2 shots from a starter pistol rang out at point-blank range. A man lunged toward him. The footage from that day is legendary among security analysts. While bodyguards scrambled, Charles did not flinch. He did not duck. He simply reached for his sleeve and adjusted his cufflink. That moment of absolute sang-froid of cold-blooded composure was the first time the world saw the psychological armor of the future king. The consequence was immediate. a global realization that the British air was unshakable. Fast forward to July 2024, Butler, Pennsylvania. A high-velocity round grazes the ear of former President Donald Trump. The immediate consequence was a total fracture in the American social fabric and the activation of the highest-level security protocols in modern history. This is the event that turned Washington, D.C. into a tinderbox. It is the reason why every sniper on every roof in the Capitol is currently on hair-trigger alert as the King's motorcade passes. But the most subtle, and perhaps most dangerous, shift happened just 5 days ago, on April 25, 2026, at the Cenotaph in Whitehall, London. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, stood in for her father-in-law at the Anzac Day service. Witnesses in the front row noticed a chilling detail during the signing of the Remembrance Book. For the first time in history, the signature read Catherine followed by William. The order of power had been inverted. The immediate consequence? A quiet frenzy among constitutional experts. The princess was not just standing in, she was being signalled as the bedrock of the monarchy, while the king moved into the line of fire. By April 28, 2026, the tension moved from London to a secure basement in Washington, D.C. The Secret Service held an emergency briefing with Buckingham Palace officials. They were reviewing the tinderbox route, the king's path through the city. The American agents wanted to cancel the public walkabouts. The palace refused. The standoff lasted 4 hours. The consequence was a compromise that looks like peace, but feels like a war zone. That brings us to 1400 hours today, April 30, 2026. The Oval Office. King Charles III sits across from Donald Trump. It is being called the toughest mission of his reign. He is facing a leader who is hypercharged by a recent brush with death, in a country on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Charles is playing the long game, attempting to bridge a gap that no politician can touch. But there is a trap waiting on the horizon. Forecast for May 1st, 2026. The garden party at the British ambassador's residence. Intelligence suggests the king plans to deliver a speech on climate change. To Trump, this topic is a non-starter. To the king, it is his life's work. In the quiet corners of the embassy, officials are whispering about a friction point that could shatter the Anglo-American alliance before the tea is even served. Charles has survived the shots in Sydney. He has survived the turmoil of his family. But as he prepares to speak tomorrow, he is facing a different kind of ammunition. The question isn't just whether he is safe, but whether the words he chooses will ignite the very tinderbox he has just walked into. The protocol is shifting, and the next 24 hours will determine if the special relationship survives the night. Inside the Oval Office, the air is thick with more than just the scent of history. As King Charles III sits across from the American president, the world sees a ceremonial meeting. But beneath the surface, a complex, high-velocity engine of soft power diplomacy is being activated. To the untrained eye, the king has no political authority. To the strategist, he is utilizing a psychological mechanism designed to paralyze hostility and reset the global board. Here is the How It Works breakdown of the royal operation currently unfolding in Washington. Step 1. The activation of the royal mystique. This is the psychological anesthetic. When a British monarch enters a room, the political temperature drops. Diplomats call this the aura of permanence. While American politicians are locked in a brutal, 4-year cycle of survival, the king represents a 1,000-year lineage. This creates an immediate power imbalance. Even the most aggressive leaders find themselves following the invisible gravity of royal protocol. An advisor within the British Embassy was overheard describing this effect as the Great Leveler. He noted that when the king stands in the room, the president is no longer just a partisan leader. He becomes part of a historical tableau. This effectively silences the immediate, loud rhetoric of the election cycle. Step 2. The deployment of the historical shield. The king is not here to innovate. He is here to remind. His team is currently utilizing the 1957 precedent. Following the Suez Crisis, The relationship between London and Washington was in ruins. Queen Elizabeth II traveled to the United States not to argue policy, but to embody the shared past. Today, Charles is using that exact same playbook. By referencing the stability of his mother's reign, he creates a diplomatic safe zone. This shield allows the British government to bypass current failures and reconnect with the American deep state on a level that is immune to the daily news cycle. Step 3. The strategic pivot. This is the most dangerous phase of the mechanism. The King's briefing notes are explicit. Avoid the tinderbox topics. The operational directive is to bypass Iran and steer clear of the internal American firestorm over Ukraine. If the king engages on these, the mechanism breaks. Instead, he is focusing the entire weight of the visit on the 250th anniversary of the United States. In the world of high-stakes PR, this is the only undisputed ground. By celebrating 1776, the king is forcing the American administration to stand on the same side of the line as the British Crown. The consequence of this three-step mechanism is profound. By the time the meeting in the Oval Office concludes, the king has transitioned from a visitor to an umpire. He has positioned the monarchy above the partisan noise of the 2026 political landscape. He becomes the neutral arbiter that both sides of the American aisle are forced to respect. But there is a flaw in the mechanism. For this soft power to work, the royal family must remain a unified front. While the king successfully navigates the president's ego, the Harry factor remains an unexploded device on American soil. Intelligence reports suggest that while the king is using history to heal the rift, a certain prince is preparing a counter-narrative that could short-circuit the entire royal mystique. The king has the president in his sights, but he may have forgotten to look behind him. The mechanism is humming, but the real threat might not be in the Oval Office. It might be waiting in the shadows of the very city he is trying to save. While the world watches King Charles III navigate the high-security corridors of the White House, a different, more chilling story is unfolding in the luxury suites of Manhattan. Prince Harry has just committed what many are calling a constitutional breach on American soil. By launching a direct verbal attack on the United States government's policy regarding Ukraine, the Duke of Sussex has moved beyond family drama and into the dangerous territory of international interference. But it is not the noise of Harry's statements that is the real story today. It is the response from Washington. Or, more accurately, the lack of one. Inside the Waldorf Astoria residences in New York, where British diplomatic staff have been coordinating the king's visit, the temperature has dropped to 0. A confidential memorandum leaked just hours ago reveals the true state of Harry's standing within the British establishment. The note, circulated to senior American officials, contains a single, devastating sentence. The views expressed by the Duke of Sussex are private and carry 0 constitutional weight. They do not, under any circumstances, represent His Majesty's government. This is the sound of a door slamming shut in the halls of power. It is a deadly silence. Washington is no longer arguing with Harry, they are simply erasing him from the diplomatic equation. The data behind this fallout is staggering. According to a high-level survey conducted just before the king's arrival, an overwhelming 84% of the public now believe that the king should refuse any meeting with Harry and Meghan while he is in the United States. This is no longer a fringe opinion, it is a mass rejection. The public's indignation has reached a boiling point, fueled by the perception that Harry is attempting to use his royal title to lecture his host nation while simultaneously distancing himself from the responsibilities that come with it. The political reaction has been even more brutal. When asked about Harry's recent criticisms of US leadership, former President Donald Trump, the man the king is meeting today, delivered a quote that has sent shockwaves through the Sussex camp. Trump remarked with characteristic bluntness, "I think I speak for the Great Britain more than Harry does at this point. He doesn't represent them. He doesn't speak for the king." This is where the authority ladder breaks for Harry. In the world of international relations, There is a specific mechanism for handling individuals who become a diplomatic liability. It is the status of persona non grata, someone who is not officially banned, but who is effectively invisible to the machinery of government. How it works is subtle but permanent. First, the host government stops inviting the individual to official briefings. Second, the home government issues a disclaimer, as we saw at the Waldorf Astoria today. Third, the individual is excluded from the security perimeter of the actual head of state. As King Charles is whisked through Washington in a motorcade protected by thousands of troops, Harry is left on the outside, shouting into a void. He is being toxified in real time. The more he lashes out, the more the American government treats him as a private citizen with an increasingly irrelevant grievance. The tragedy, or the calculated consequence, is that Harry's attempt to stay relevant is achieving the exact opposite. He is being pushed to the margins of history while his father reclaims the center stage. But as the king prepares for tonight's state dinner, there is a lingering fear among his advisors. A cornered duke is a desperate one. And if Harry realizes that Washington has stopped listening, his next move might be designed to ensure that the world has no choice but to watch the fallout. The silence in DC is deafening, but it might just be the quiet before a different kind of storm. While the eyes of the world are fixed on the heavy security cordons of Washington, D.C., a silent but seismic shift in power has just taken place on the streets of London. At precisely 1100 hours, the Princess of Wales stepped into the chilling air of Whitehall. To the casual observer, it was a somber moment of remembrance at the cenotaph, but to those trained to read the subtle language of the monarchy, it was the activation of a stay-behind protocol that changes everything. While King Charles is navigating the tinderbox of the American capital, Catherine has emerged as more than just a royal spouse. She is now the supreme representative. The evidence is hidden in plain sight, in a single handwritten card resting among the poppies at the foot of the monument. For decades, royal protocol has dictated a strict hierarchy. The male heir always precedes the consort, but today, the signature on the official tribute read, Catherine and William. The names were reversed. In the world of the British Crown, there are no accidents, and there are no typos. This was a deliberate, coded message broadcast to the global diplomatic community. This is the reversal of command. Behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace, the mechanism is clear. Before departing for his high-risk mission to the United States, King Charles issued a specific operational directive. He has granted Catherine domestic oversight. While the king is in the line of fire both politically and physically across the Atlantic, he has left the keys to the kingdom in the hands of the princess. One senior official within the Lord Chamberlain's office whispered that this was a strategic safeguard. If the situation in Washington were to deteriorate, or if the security of the sovereign were compromised on American soil, Catherine is the one positioned to maintain the continuity of the crown. The authority for this move sits within a high-level legal framework, the amended Regency Act. Under the new protocols established in late 2024, the role of Counselor of State was evolved to meet modern threats. Catherine is no longer merely the wife of the heir. She has been elevated to what insiders call the spare head of state. How this mechanism works is profound. Under the current domestic oversight trigger, Catherine has the authority to receive government briefings and oversee the Privy Council, while the King and the Prince of Wales are focused on the American front. This is not just a temporary favor. It is a rehearsal for the ultimate responsibility. The King is signaling to the world that the future of the monarchy is secure, stable, and most importantly ready to lead at a moment's notice. The feeling among the crowds in London today was one of quiet satisfaction. While the Sussexes struggle for a voice in Manhattan and the King faces the volatility of the Oval Office, Catherine has become the shadow monarch of London. She is the calm centre of a global storm, but as the Princess of Wales returns to Kensington Palace, the true gravity of her new position is beginning to settle. She is now the final line of defence, and as the sun sets over the Thames, the focus shifts back to the dark streets of Washington. The king is in the meeting, the princess is on the watch. But there is one final variable, a scenario that neither the Secret Service nor the Metropolitan Police have fully accounted for. A meeting is about to take place in a private residence in DC that was never on the official itinerary. And the person waiting in that room holds a secret that could render even the Regency Act obsolete. As the heavy doors of the Oval Office remain closed, the geopolitical world is holding its breath. We are at a crossroads that will define the next century of the Anglo-American alliance. Based on the intelligence gathered from the ground in Washington and the silent shifts in London, there are three distinct paths this tinderbox mission can take. The first path is the diplomatic meltdown. In this worst-case scenario, the king's commitment to his life's work becomes his undoing. If Charles insists on lecturing a newly emboldened President Trump on carbon footprints and global warming during tonight's state dinner, the reaction could be explosive. We have seen this before. Trump has gone on record calling these topics droning. A public snub or a dismissive comment from the president on the eve of the 250th anniversary of American independence would trigger a diplomatic fault line not seen since the 19th century. The second path is the static narrative. This is the neutral scenario where the meeting is polite but powerless. In this version, the Sussexes successfully execute a counter-programming media strike from California or New York, flooding the airwaves with information warfare that drowns out the king's message of stability. The king becomes a figurehead of the past, while the media focuses on the fractures of the present. The visit is labeled ceremonial and irrelevant, leaving the special relationship to wither in the shadows of Harry's noise. However, our most likely scenario, the one the Operation Golden Scepter team is betting on, is the Warrior King alliance. Why is this the most realistic outcome? Because Donald Trump has always operated on a currency of strength and lineage. He was famously devoted to the late Queen Elizabeth II, treating her with a level of deference he showed to almost no other world leader. By landing in Washington, D.C. while it was under a level 5 lockdown, by showing the same sang-froid he displayed under fire in Sydney in 1994, Charles has earned a rare form of respect in the president's eyes. In this scenario, Charles uses his brave ambassador status to forge a personal bond with the president that transcends policy. They find common ground in the concept of grandeur and national pride. The immediate consequence? A total isolation of Prince Harry and the radical factions. If the king and the president stand united on the balcony of the British Embassy, the Duke of Sussex is no longer a rebel prince, he is simply an outsider with no seat at the table. This would be a masterstroke of soft power, effectively detoxifying the royal brand in the eyes of the American establishment. But as the sun sets over the Potomac River, and the motorcade prepares to move to the British ambassador's residence for the evening's final engagement, the tension has not dissipated. In fact, it has localized. Our sources within the diplomatic protection detail have flagged a staggering anomaly. Tonight's guest list for the private garden reception was supposed to be locked down 72 hours ago. Yet, a late-entry vehicle with non-diplomatic plates was spotted entering the secure garage of the embassy just moments ago. There is a chi-square in the security grid, a meeting that was never briefed to the Prime Minister or the State Department. King Charles is about to come face-to-face with a guest whose presence on the guest list would be considered a breach of every royal protocol in existence. This person holds the key to the Manhattan Files and the truth behind the king's sudden defiance. Who is the unlisted guest waiting in the shadows of the British Embassy? And what does their presence mean for the future of the crown? The answers are already being compiled. To make sure you do not miss the breaking update on the ghost of Manhattan and the fallout from tonight's secret meeting, you must act now. Click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon for all notifications, and drop a comment below with your theory. Who is the mystery guest? The board is set. The final move is tonight. We will see you first thing tomorrow morning for the full disclosure. Don't look away. Washington, District of Columbia. 3:45 p.m. The capital of the United States is currently witnessing the final assassination of a royal reputation. As the armored motorcade of King Charles III glides smoothly down Pennsylvania Avenue, a shattering silence has fallen over the $100 million security apparatus. Prince Harry is reportedly watching from the upper windows of a secure luxury hotel less than 200 yards away. The king does not look up. The windows of the state limousine remain tinted and closed. There is no stop. There is no recognition. For the first time in history, a British monarch has treated his own son as an invisible entity on international soil. This is not a coincidence. This is a diplomatic no-fly zone established by Buckingham Palace and enforced by the United States Secret Service. Sources inside the State Department are calling it the most humiliating moment of Prince Harry's life. We are opening the dossier on what is now known as the mother of all snubs. If you are shocked by this level of coldness from the king, hit the like button immediately and subscribe. The news we are about to reveal is breaking. As of this morning, April 29, 2026. Inside the presidential suite at Blair House, the historic guest house opposite the White House, a critical document has been leaked. It is the final guest list for tonight's state banquet in the East Room. The font is elegant, the paper is heavy, but the content is devastating. The name of the Duke of Sussex is clearly visible, but it has been struck through with a single, bold stroke of red ink. According to an internal memo from the White House Office of Protocol, this was not a mistake. The memo states that the attendance of non-working members of the royal family is strictly prohibited under a new security framework. We are talking about the 2025 Diplomatic Clause Amendment. This legal mechanism was quietly signed into effect last year. It classifies any non-working royal attempting to attend a state-level event without a formal invitation as a Level 2 security threat. According to palace insiders, King Charles himself reviewed this protocol before landing at Dulles Airport. The king reportedly told his senior advisors in a private briefing at Highgrove that the Crown is no longer in the business of providing backdrop for private drama. He made it clear that this trip is about preserving the special relationship between London and Washington, not repairing a broken home. The coordination between the Royalty and Specialist Protection Command and the United States authorities has been surgical. The Royal Security Detail was instructed to provide zero logistical support to the Sussex camp during this 48-hour window. Narratives from within the embassy suggest that Harry desperately attempted to arrange a 5-minute private meeting at the embassy gardens. The response he received was a cold, formal notification from the King's private secretary stating that His Majesty's schedule is fully committed to national interests. This is the reality of April 29, 2026. Harry is in the same city, on the same street, but he is light years away from the power he once held. The contrast is sharp. While the king prepares to discuss geopolitical stability and trade agreements with the president, the Duke is confined to a hotel suite, watching the news just like the rest of the world. The palace has not just removed his privileges, they have erased his relevance. How did we get here? The trigger was pulled months ago during the disastrous tour of Australia, where the public indifference toward the Sussexes became impossible to ignore. But the final nail in the coffin was the 2025 Diplomatic Clause. This is the mechanism of exclusion. Step 1. Strip the diplomatic status. Step 2. Activate the Security Threat Protocol. Step 3. Remove all forms of official communication. The result is the total isolation we are seeing today. As we watch the elite of Washington, D.C. gather for the most important state visit in a generation, the absence of the king's youngest son is the loudest statement ever made by the monarchy. Do you think the king has gone too far, or is this the tough love Harry deserves? Leave a comment below with the word justice if you stand with the king, or family if you think Harry should have been invited. We are monitoring the situation minute by minute. Stay tuned. because the next 12 hours in Washington will determine if the Sussex brand can ever survive this defeat. The clock is ticking toward the banquet, and the red line on that guest list is not fading. To understand the brutal silence at Pennsylvania Avenue, we must reconstruct the domino effect that began 14 days ago. This was not a sudden fall from grace. It was a calculated, tactical dismantling of the Sussex brand, executed with surgical precision. Normally, a royal visit is a time for family reconciliation, but the documents we have obtained reveal a timeline of deliberate abandonment. The first crack appeared on April 15, 2026. While the world was preparing for the king's visit, a compliance disaster struck in California. The Federal Trade Commission issued a formal cease and desist order against Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand. The charge was a critical violation of labeling standards. The infamous strawberry jam, once promoted as the symbol of their independence, was officially suspended from distribution. The reason? A failure to meet purity requirements and misleading origin claims. The immediate consequence was devastating. Their financial leverage vanished overnight. By the time the king stepped onto the plane, the Sussexes were no longer moguls. They were defendants in a regulatory nightmare. 5 days later, on April 20, 2026, the scene shifted to London. Inside the red brick walls of Kensington Palace, the Prince of Wales held a 3-hour closed-door meeting with his private secretary. Sources close to the Crown confirmed that this was the moment the persona non grata protocol was activated. William reportedly presented a memorandum to the king, arguing that any contact with Harry during the US visit would fatally weaken the monarchy's stance against those who betray royal trust. The decision was finalized in that room. Harry was officially classified as a private citizen with zero diplomatic standing. Then came the geopolitical shift that sealed Harry's fate. On April 25, 2026, the re-election of Donald Trump altered the diplomatic landscape of Washington, D.C. The new president publicly dismissed the British Prime Minister as an amateur, leaving the United Kingdom in a precarious position. Suddenly, King Charles was no longer just a visiting monarch. He became the only bridge to salvage the special relationship. In a high-stakes game of global trade and defense, the king had no time for the drama of a disgruntled son. Harry was not just a family problem anymore. He had become a diplomatic liability. The most heartbreaking moment occurred at 9:00 am on April 28, 2026. As the king's official jet touched down at Dulles International Airport, Harry began a desperate attempt at communication. We have learned that the Duke sent 12 consecutive WhatsApp messages to his father's top aide. He pleaded for a private audience. He offered to bring the children to a discreet location. The blue checks appeared on each message. The aide had read them, but the response was a chilling void. No reply, no typing bubble. Just the cold reality that the door to the firm had been bolted from the inside. Now, we are at the present moment. The afternoon of April 29, 2026. The British Embassy in Washington is hosting a magnificent garden party. The air is filled with the sound of a military band and the clinking of crystal. Inside, the elite of American and British society are toasting to the future. Outside, standing behind the reinforced security fence, is the king's youngest son. He is watching the power he once inherited from the distance of a spectator. The crown has not just moved on. It has completely rewritten the narrative. The question now lingering in the air of DC is not if Harry will be seen with his father, but what happens when he realizes that the silence is permanent. The timeline of abandonment is complete, and the next chapter promises a revelation that no one in California is prepared to face. To understand the devastation we are witnessing in Washington, we must strip away the emotion and look at the cold, bureaucratic machinery of the crown. This is not a family argument. It is a systematic deconstruction called the shadow ban protocol. It is a three-step strategy designed to render a royal prince totally irrelevant on the global stage. And according to our sources within the British Foreign Office, the entire operation was triggered by a single act of defiance. Step 1 is the authority severance. The trigger was Harry's recent spontaneous interview with ITV News, where he tried to reclaim his narrative as a frontline royal. The Crown's response was swift and surgical. Buckingham Palace issued a formal diplomatic note to the United States State Department. The message was clear. The Duke of Sussex does not represent the Crown. He has no diplomatic status. Do not extend any official protocol to him or his staff. We are told that an official at the State Department read the note and simply remarked, "He's on his own now." By severing his authority, the palace has stripped Harry of the armor that protected him since birth. Without this diplomatic shield, he is not a prince. He is just another immigrant in California, subject to the full force of the law. That leads us to step 2, the legal freeze. This is where the attack becomes financial. For months, Meghan Markle has been pushing her lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard. But suddenly, the machinery of the federal government has turned against her. The national food authorities have initiated a full-scale inspection into the brand's supply chain, specifically targeting the origin of the ingredients in her spreads. The palace is no longer providing the informal protection that usually prevents royal-adjacent businesses from being scrutinized. The message from London to the US regulators was subtle but deadly. Treat them like anyone else. Without the royal halo, the brand has collapsed under the weight of regulatory fines and compliance issues. The luxury image has been replaced by investigative files. Step 3 is the most brutal: the media blackout. Inside the embassy, there is a new directive known as the William Doctrine. Prince William has reportedly told his communication teams that there will be no rebuttals, no statements, and no acknowledgement of Harry's existence. One senior aide narrated the command to us: "We are not fighting him anymore. We are simply erasing the space he occupies." This is why the king can drive past Harry's hotel without blinking. The palace is leaking a specific narrative to the global press. The king is listening to William now. The soft, forgiving father has been replaced by a monarch who values the institution above his own blood. The consequence of this protocol is total. Harry has lost his last weapon, his connection to the source of his power. By being banned from the state visit, by being struck from the guest list at Blair House, and by being targeted by regulators, he has been demoted. He is no longer a global power player. He is a B-list celebrity struggling to sell runny jam in a saturated market. The fame remains, but the prestige is gone. As the doors of the East Room swing shut tonight for the state banquet, Harry will be on the outside, looking at a world that no longer requires his presence. But while the palace celebrates this victory, a new threat is emerging in the heart of the American political system, and it is something no protocol can stop. The real battle for Harry's survival has just moved from the embassy to the highest levels of the White House. While the tabloids are fixated on the family feud, the real war is being waged behind the closed doors of the Oval Office. We are witnessing a high-stakes geopolitical gambit where the survival of the British economy depends on the charisma of a king and the cold dismissal of a rebel son in Washington, D.C. The atmosphere is electric with a specific kind of tension. The presidential administration has made its position clear. They have zero respect for the current tenant of No. 10 Downing Street. Internal briefings from the National Security Council reportedly describe Prime Minister Keir Starmer as an amateur and a political lightweight. The special relationship is not just frosty, it is on the verge of total collapse. But there is one exception to the president's contempt: the British monarchy. It is a well-documented fact that the president admired Queen Elizabeth II with a reverence he extends to few others. He views the crown not as a decoration, but as the ultimate symbol of national strength. This is the authority staircase that King Charles must climb to save his country. The primary objective of this state visit is the UK-US FTA 2026, a draft free trade agreement that could determine Britain's prosperity for the next decade. According to documents leaked from the National Security Council, this deal is currently hanging by a thread. The presidential strategy is simple. He deals with leaders, not bureaucrats. If King Charles can prove he is a sovereign who commands total discipline within his own ranks, the deal moves forward. If he appears weak, distracted, or undermined by family scandal, the United Kingdom will be given a zero-priority status in the new global economic alliance. This is why the presence of Prince Harry in Washington is being treated by the palace as an act of national sabotage. Every minute the king spends addressing Harry's grievances is a minute taken away from securing the future of British trade. A senior diplomat at the British Embassy narrated a chilling exchange to us. During a preparatory meeting for the state dinner, a presidential aide asked point-blank, "If the king cannot control his own household, how can we expect him to be the stable partner we need for a 20-year trade treaty?" The message was received loud and clear. The Crown must project unbreakable unity. Any recognition of Harry would not just be a personal mistake, it would be a geopolitical disaster. The stakes for the British public are absolute. If the king fails to charm the president, if he allows the Harry and Meghan circus to overshadow the diplomatic mission, the consequences will be felt by every taxpayer in the United Kingdom. We are talking about potential exclusion from key defence agreements and the loss of billions in projected investment. For the palace, Harry is no longer just a disgruntled son. He is a geopolitical obstacle that must be neutralised. As the clock ticks toward the official signing ceremony at the West Wing, the pressure on the king is immense. He is being asked to choose between his blood and his billions. The president is watching, the National Security Council is watching, and most critically, the markets are watching. A rumour is currently circulating through the corridors of power that the president has made a specific request regarding the Duke of Sussex. It is a request that places the king in an impossible position, one that could either seal the trade deal or trigger the final collapse of the House of Windsor. The next move in this global game of chess will not happen in a courtroom, but during a private toast where the wrong word could cost a kingdom its future. While the king is engaged in high-stakes diplomacy at the pinnacle of global power, the Sussex Empire is crumbling at the bottom of a jar. There is a sharp, almost poetic irony in the events unfolding today. April 29, 2026. As the world watches the monarchy secure the future of nations, a devastating bureaucratic blow has just been delivered to California. We have obtained access to a classified compliance dossier from the United States Food and Drug Administration Office in Maryland. The document, officially filed under investigative case number US-2026-R001, is the ultimate humiliation for the Duke and Duchess. The report is cold, clinical, and absolute. It states that the signature product from Meghan Markle's brand, American Riviera Orchard, has failed to meet the federal purity standards required to be labeled as jam. According to the FDA's chemical analysis, the product contains excessive water content and insufficient fruit solids. The official ruling is brutal. The product must be reclassified as a fruit spread or, more derisively, fruit-flavored syrup. For a brand built on the concept of luxury and aristocratic quality, this is a terminal blow. But the real story is not in the chemistry. It is in the desperate, failed power play that happened in the background. As the king was entering the Oval Office for his private meeting with the president, sources reveal that Prince Harry was on a secure line to a senior official at the FDA. One internal source narrated the exchange to us, describing a voice that was loud, frantic, and increasingly agitated. Harry reportedly tried to invoke his diplomatic status, suggesting that the investigation was politically motivated and demanding an immediate halt to the release of the findings. The response he received was the chilling sound of a door closing. The bureaucrat on the other end reportedly replied, "Sir, we respect your position, But this is a matter of regulatory compliance. No one is above the purity standards of the United States government. The contrast is almost unbearable. In the Oval Office, King Charles is discussing the future of the North Atlantic Alliance and the stability of the global economy. He is treated with the highest level of state reverence. Meanwhile, his youngest son is reduced to arguing with mid-level bottle inspectors about the definition of runny fruit sugar. This is the exact moment the prestige died. It is the ultimate point of failure in Harry's long campaign to prove he could build a better, more successful life outside the royal family. The Prince of the Realm has become the spokesman for a rejected spread. This regulatory disaster is the direct result of the shadow ban protocol we revealed earlier. Without the protective umbrella of Buckingham Palace, the Sussexes are subjected to the same cold, unyielding scrutiny as any other commercial entity. The FDA does not care about titles. They care about compliance. Harry's attempt to intervene was not just a failure. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. It proved that his influence in Washington is non-existent. He has no friends in the deep state, no allies in the regulatory agencies, and no standing in the eyes of the law. As the afternoon sun sets over the Potomac River, the magnitude of this defeat is sinking in. The man who once flew on military jets and commanded global attention is now facing a mountain of legal fees and a reputation in tatters. The palace has not just outmaneuvered him. They have watched as he tripped over his own ambition. But as humiliating as this fee slap is, the worst is yet to come. A new legal challenge is surfacing regarding Harry's very right to remain on American soil, and the source of this threat is someone he once called a friend. The stakes are no longer about jam labels, they are about deportation. As the sun sets over the Potomac River, on this transformative April 29, 2026, we are standing at a constitutional crossroads. The smoke from the diplomatic battlefield is clearing, and three distinct paths are emerging for the future of the House of Windsor. This is the scenario tree that will determine the fate of Prince Harry, and one of them is already being activated in the shadows of Washington, D.C. The first scenario, and the most explosive, is the physical collapse. Imagine a moment of pure desperation, where the Duke of Sussex attempts to breach the security perimeter at the British Embassy garden party. According to our sources near the security detail, the orders are absolute. Harry is to be treated as a trespasser. If he attempts an uninvited entry, he will be physically escorted away by American law enforcement. The image of a British prince being handcuffed by U.S. Secret Service agents would be the terminal point. It would not just end his relationship with his father. It would end his global relevance forever. The second scenario is the retaliation from California. Harry silently withdraws, returns to Montecito, and begins work on a second memoir, a sequel to Spare. But this time, the climate has changed. The re-elected Trump administration has already voiced concerns regarding Harry's visa status. We are learning that the Department of Homeland Security is closely monitoring the Duke's recent admissions in his previous writings. In this scenario, any attack on the crown during the King's U.S. visit would be met with an immediate revocation of his right to remain on American soil. The weaponized pen would become the trigger for his own deportation. However, the third and most realistic scenario is the one we call the soft regency. According to high-level leaks from London, Prince William is already the de facto decision-maker for this entire U.S. tour. The king is the symbol, but William is the architect. We have heard rumors of a new letters patent being drafted in Kensington Palace. This is the constitutional guillotine. It would formally remove Harry and his descendants from the line of succession, stripping them of every last vestige of royal standing. Under William's direction, the monarchy is no longer a family business. It is a defense of the state. As the elite gather for the state dinner tonight, the suspense is unbearable. But there is one final detail that every major news outlet has missed. At exactly 11 o'clock p.m. last night, An unmarked black SUV left the rear entrance of Blair House. It did not head toward the White House. Instead, it drove directly toward the hotel where Prince Harry is currently staying. Who was inside that vehicle? Was it a secret envoy from a father seeking one last chance at peace? Or was it the carrier of a permanent ultimatum? We have obtained a photograph of a manila envelope being handed to Harry's head of security at the service entrance. The contents of that envelope are linked to a classified dossier we just received from a source at the Foreign Office in London. What is inside will change the narrative of this state visit completely. The truth is hidden in the fine print of that document, and we are preparing to break the story in our next update. Do not miss the revelation that the mainstream media is too afraid to touch. Hit the subscribe button now and turn on all notifications. If you believe the monarchy must protect itself at all costs, leave a comment with the word crown. If you think the silence has gone too far, comment with family. The clock is ticking in Washington, and the final verdict is about to be delivered. We will see you in the next